I can capture a Pokémon in the dragon's den? The next morning, as Johan walked alongside Lance and Claire toward the dragon's den, he felt a growing sense of unease. Lance, however, seemed far too cheerful for Johan's liking. I didn't want to stress you out, so I didn't mention the dragon trial yesterday, Lance said with an apologetic smile, rubbing the back of his head. Johan narrowed his eyes. Dragon trial? With a gleeful nod, Lance explained the details. Johan sighed, pressing his fingers to his temple. Just great. Raising Haunter, Vulpix, and Tinkatuff was already stretching his finances to their limit. The idea of adding another Pokémon, especially one from the Dragon's Den, felt like financial suicide. He thought about Cynthia's Garchomp. Just yesterday, she had casually wired 5 million Poké-dollars for a batch of dragon scales. Not even for training, just snacks. Haunter, already eating like a bottomless pit, was bad enough. Vulpix, despite its small size, had an appetite that didn't match its stature. And it still needed a high-quality ice stone and a mental herb for optimal growth. Then there was Tinkatuff, whose obsession with strength training and forging metal was a logistical nightmare. And now a pseudo-legendary? Lance might be the greatest wallet assassin of all time. Still, Johan wasn't one to let an opportunity slip by. The Dragon's Den housed powerful dragon types, and if he found a compatible partner, it would be foolish to pass up the chance. As they stepped into the flower-laden fields of the den, a familiar cry rang out. Dry! Johan turned just in time to see a small Dratini rubbing its body against a moss-covered rock, its expression one of fierce determination. Nearby, a Dragonite watched with mild amusement. Moments later, Dratini's body glowed faintly as its skin wrinkled and peeled away, revealing fresh, sleek scales beneath. Oh, it's shedding! Johan realized. Lance nodded. Dratini shed their skin periodically as they grow. The discarded skin is actually quite valuable. Some trainers use it to craft premium boots. Before Johan could react, Haunter swooped in, snatched the shed skin, and promptly slipped into it. Ka. Haunter cackled, floating around like a bizarre Dratini imposter. Dratini, rather than being startled, looked intrigued. Circled Haunter curiously, as if trying to determine if it had acquired a new sibling. Johan chuckled. Dratini wasn't a bad choice. Its uncanny ability to turn misfortune into fortune during battles, something Lance called the luck balance phenomenon, could work in Johan's favor. More importantly, it didn't seem to have an enormous appetite. At least not yet. But what stood out most was its ambition. Dratini clearly aspired to greatness, likely influenced by its father, Dragonite. That pride and determination made it a strong candidate for his team. Still, before anything else, Johan had a more pressing matter, checking on Gyarados. He approached the massive, sleeping creature, its crimson scales glistening under the cavern's dim light. The deep, steady rise and fall of its body indicated it was in much better shape than yesterday. Rest was crucial for recovery. All right, time to wake up. Johan turned to Dratini. I'll need your help again. Dratini, already by his side, nodded eagerly. Dry! Crackling thunderbolts surged forward. Roar! The furious bellow of a newly awakened Gyarados echoed through the den, sending shivers down Johan's spine. Before it could act on its rage, Tinkatuff's hammer came crashing down. Thud! Gyarados slumped back into unconsciousness. Dratini let out a relieved sigh. Johan gave it a sympathetic pat. One more time, Dratini. Dry? The little dragon glanced at the snoring Gyarados, then at Johan, then back at Gyarados. Suddenly understood true suffering. The cycle continued. Zap. Roar. Hammer. Repeat. By the time Gyarados reached some semblance of emotional stability, Johan noted its progress. It's improving. In 2 days, it should be stable enough for you to handle, Lance. Lance nodded firmly. I'll take full responsibility. As they prepared to leave, Johan felt something coil around his wrist. He turned to see Dratini gazing at him with quiet determination. Dry. Lance and Claire exchanged knowing smiles. Oh? Finally making up its mind? Claire mused. Lance smirked. Pokémon and trainers are naturally drawn to each other. Johan crouched, reaching for a luxury ball. But before he could offer it, Dratini stopped his hand with its tail. Dry. You want a battle? Johan asked, surprised. Dratini nodded. Its fierce resolve made Johan smile. Scanning his team, Dratini hesitated between Haunter, Tinkatuff, and Vulpix. For a moment, its gaze settled on the small fox. Vulpix tilted its head in surprise. Challenging an ice type? Bold choice, the Dragon Elder chuckled. Dratini blinked. Ice type? It had carefully avoided Haunter and Tinkatuff, thinking they were too formidable. Vulpix had seemed like the safest opponent, but as the temperature dropped and a fierce blizzard swept through the arena, Dratini suddenly realized it had made a miscalculation. Dry. Caught in the icy gale, Dratini froze mid-charge, its freshly shed skin ill-equipped for the cold. Frost spread over its body, its movements slowing to a crawl. That's enough, Vulpix. Johan raised his hand. The snowstorm subsided, leaving Dratini encased in ice. A courageous effort, the Dragon Elder praised. Johan sighed, tossing the luxury ball. The ball barely shook before locking in place with a satisfying click. Johan stared at his team, Haunter, Vulpix, Tinkatuff, and now Dratini. A mischievous ghost, a determined fox, a hammer-wielding berserker, and a pseudo-legendary dragon. He rubbed his temple, exhaling slowly. I'm pretty sure I just assembled a team designed to shorten my lifespan. Inside the pitch-black luxury ball. Within the dark confines of the luxury ball, the freshly thawed Dratini curiously explored its new surroundings. Its movements were lively, showing no signs of lingering damage from Vulpix's blizzard. Johan nodded in satisfaction. Dratini's ability to recover quickly was impressive, a testament to the resilience of dragon-type Pokémon. But Johan couldn't shake the feeling that Dratini's peculiar luck played a role in its survival. Its bad luck seemed to lead it into near disasters, only to make it stronger in the aftermath. Take earlier, for example, when the sleeping Gyarados rolled over, Dratini had nearly been crushed beneath its massive body. If it hadn't just shed its skin, it might not have even noticed. Durable. Easy to care for, Johan thought, feeling a small sense of relief. Looks like it recognizes you wholeheartedly, Lance observed with a chuckle. Johan nodded. Seems so. As someone prone to overthinking, he found himself relating to Dratini, whose internal monologue probably mirrored his own, complex and chaotic. Lance suddenly pulled out an ancient, weathered book and shoved it into Johan's hands. Bold, vigorous characters were scrawled across the cover. Dragon Taming Secrets. Before Johan could react, Lance patted his shoulder. Don't mention it. We're friends. Johan raised an eyebrow. Is this dragon taming guide even legit? He flipped open the first page. Dratini cannot fly, but if it learns Dragon Dance, it can achieve brief aerial movement. Upon evolving into Dragonair, sustained flight becomes possible. Johan smirked. Classic Lance, the flight specialist. Claire approached, waving an identical book at him teasingly. Suddenly, everything clicked. No wonder most of their Pokémon could fly. But jokes aside, the book contained valuable insights. Detailed various methods for raising dragon types, with a particular emphasis on Dratini, Dragonair, and Dragonite. The Dragon Clan clearly didn't mind letting promising trainers raise their Pokémon. After all, many powerful dragon types trained here would return as protectors after their trainers' journeys ended. Thanks, Johan said sincerely. Catching Dratini, a pseudo-legendary Pokémon, had been an unexpected windfall. While Dragonite was often joked about for being chubby, its final form exuded both charm and power. And in terms of strength, well, it had no equal among non-legendary Pokémon. Johan had a plan. Dual offense. In traditional battles, Dragonite was often seen as a physical attacker, favoring moves like extreme speed. But in real-world combat, limiting such a powerhouse to only physical moves seemed like a waste. If even Haunter, with its pitiful base 50 attack, could use Shadow Punch effectively, then why shouldn't Dragonite make full use of its solid 100 special attack? Dragonite's wide move pool was one of its greatest strengths. With its quirky luck factored in, teaching it powerful high-risk moves like Fire Blast, Focus Blast, Hurricane, or Thunder seemed like an opportunity too good to pass up. Of course, these moves required expensive TMs. So this is where the trap lies, Johan thought grimly. He could already hear his wallet screaming in protest. On the bright side, Dragonite already knew Hydro Pump, and had somehow managed to land 4 consecutive hits with it. If only I could get my hands on a normal-type Terra Orb. Converting Dragonite's Dragon Slash flying typing into normal would eliminate its devastating Ice-type weakness. It would also give extreme speed an insane boost under Terra Boost conditions, turning Dragonite into an unstoppable priority sweeper. The problem? Terra Orbs were exclusive to the Paldea region. Pokémon League had barely released any information about terrestrialization, and even if Johan wanted one, obtaining it would be near impossible. Lance, however, had already latched onto the idea. Reclaiming the glory of normal-type champions? Say no more. Shaking off his far-fetched dreams, Johan refocused on the present. Team bonding. Back at Claire's guest house, Johan decided to work on fostering camaraderie among his Pokémon, especially their new member, Dragonite. Dragonite gazed curiously at Haunter, Vulpix, and Tinkatuff, who had formed a tight huddle. Haunter threw an arm around Vulpix and Tinkatuff, leaning in conspiratorially. Kaka, we must uphold our trainer's hypnosis expertise. Vulpix tilted its head skeptically. Oh, but Dragonite doesn't seem like the hypnosis type. Tinkatuff patted its hammer confidently. Chew. I've got hammer hypnosis covered. Haunter and Vulpix exchanged glances, enlightenment dawning. Haunter clapped its hands. Kaka! Physical hypnosis plus magical hypnosis. Perfect combo. Vulpix hesitated. Oh, Dragonite's wake-up service is pretty effective too. The 3 Pokémon shared a moment of understanding. Indeed, Dragonite's wake-up service was legendary. Watching their secretive huddle, Johan rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Seems like Dragonite won't be corrupted so easily. The next second, Kaka! Haunter dragged Dragonite into their huddle. The 4 pressed their heads together, whispering in a comically intense display of scheming. Johan sighed, wiping his forehead. Just building friendships, he reassured himself. As a Pokémon Psychologist team, discussing hypnosis techniques seemed par for the course, right? At least Dragonite was integrating quickly. To celebrate, let's eat out tonight, Johan decided, heading to his room. He had 2 gifts in mind for Dragonite, and this was the perfect opportunity to present them. The hammer and the dragon. Unbeknownst to Johan, as soon as he left, the conversation among his Pokémon took a bizarre turn. Dragonite would one day evolve into Dragonite. Tinkatuff would evolve into Tinkaton. This could only mean one thing. Giant Dragon Hammer Duo. Tinkatuff envisioned a future where it and Dragonite worked together to take down massive flying types. Its eyes sparkled with ambition. Haunter, ever the wise strategist, patted both Tinkatuff and Dragonite reassuringly. Kaka! Johan works hard to provide for us. We must repay him by being strong. Tinkatuff, already experienced in frugality, nodded vigorously. Chew. Agreed. Dragonite, though slightly overwhelmed, found itself nodding along. As a great dragon-type Pokémon, helping its trainer achieve greatness was an obvious choice. Suddenly, Haunter froze, its expression turning serious. Kaka! Floated to the ceiling, phasing its head through the wooden beams. A green, spider-like Pokémon hung upside down, a Spinarak. And standing nearby, clad in black ninja attire, was a figure perched on a support beam. Haunter's eyes narrowed. A ninja. The ninja seemed just as startled to see Haunter. He opened his mouth to speak, but a massive shadow ball was already flying toward him. Koga?
Hey, everyone! If you enjoy my quantum audiobooks, you can support me by becoming a Patreon member. Your support helps me keep creating, and you'll get exclusive perks. You can also access my audiobooks directly through Google Drive. Check out the link in the description. Now, let's get started.
Boom! Just as Johan was leaving his room with the Dragon Fong and the Dragon Pulse TM, he froze. There was now a massive hole in the ceiling. Did my house just collapse? No, this wasn't his house, it was Lance's. Well, in that case, it's fine. Realizing this, Johan quickly scanned the room, looking for Haunter. Judging by the size and shape of the hole, it was obvious that a shadow ball, and likely a massive one, was the culprit. The buildings in Blackthorn City, especially those owned by the Dragon Clan, followed an old-fashioned style. This guest house, arranged by Claire, was no exception, a standalone wooden villa with a small garden. The damage to the roof wasn't catastrophic, but it still left a gaping hole in the ceiling. Oh! Vulpix rushed to Johan's side, crouching slightly with its 6 tails spread wide. A faint frost swirled in the air as it readied for an attack. Meanwhile, Tinkatuff grabbed its hammer and leapt up to the ceiling with a loud "Chew! I'll protect you." Dratini, reacting a bit slower, gulped nervously before slithering over to Johan's side. Gian, it's only my first day here and it's already this chaotic? Through the hole in the ceiling, Johan finally spotted Haunter and someone else. Standing on the rafters was a masked figure in ninja garb, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. Koga, current gym leader of Fuchsia City in Kanto, and the future Poison-type Elite Four member of Johto. This point in time, Koga also happened to be one of Team Rocket's highest-ranking executives. What's he doing here in Blackthorn City? And more importantly, why was he lurking in the ceiling of Johan's temporary residence? Johan's first thought was that Koga might be targeting him, but he quickly dismissed the idea. There was no reason for Koga to come after him. Even if Koga had been sent by someone like Giovanni with his strength, there would be no need for stealth. Koga really wanted Johan dead. He'd simply flood the room with minimized Grimers or Mooks, a notoriously underhanded tactic Koga was known for. In the Pokémon Adventures manga, Koga used minimized Pokémon for everything: offense, defense, even assassination. Till the situation was too bizarre. Why would Koga show up at the Dragon Clan's property in broad daylight? Caw. Hovering in midair, Haunter licked its lips and narrowed its eyes. Koga glanced at the faintly glowing Weezing floating beside him. It had barely managed to counter Haunter's shadow ball earlier. Seeing Haunter preparing another attack, Koga's expression shifted slightly. "Johan," he called, his muffled voice calm but urgent. "I am Koga, gym leader of Fuchsia City. I mean no harm." "Haunter!" Johan quickly raised his hand, signaling his Pokémon to stand down as soon as Koga identified himself. Caw. Haunter cast Koga a wary glance before retreating to Johan's side. Tinkatuff followed, dragging its hammer along. Koga remained on the rafters, his posture stiff but non-threatening. "I've come here with a simple request," he said. Johan raised an eyebrow, his tone laced with sarcasm. "You have a unique way of making requests, don't you? What exactly is it that you want, Koga?" Koga cleared his throat, a rare hint of embarrassment flashing in his eyes. I would like to ask for your autograph." Johan blinked. An autograph? Of all the possible explanations, this was the last thing he'd expected. Koga seemed to sense Johan's confusion. He fumbled with his phone and played an audio recording. A young girl's voice rang out. "Dad, if you don't bring me Johan's autograph, I'm not talking to you for a whole week." Koga's daughter, Janine? Janine was destined to inherit the Fuchsia Gym once Koga ascended to the Elite Four. Seriously? Johan muttered, trying to process the situation. He prepared for any scenario. Team rocket schemes, psychological consultations, even Koga's own mental health issues, but this? Is it because of my substitute defense toxic strat? Or the spikes layering tactic? Johan asked cautiously. Those were the only things he could think of that might appeal to a poison-type trainer. Koga shook his head, sighing deeply. She said. Koga hesitated, then played another recording. Compared to Johan, Dad, your tactics are just lame. Johan? Lame? This isn't lame. Strategy. Wait, why was Koga recording all of this? Does he keep an audio kill list or something? Johan sighed. All right, Koga. Let's get this over with. Relieved, Koga leapt down from the rafters and approached Johan with a photograph in hand. It was a promotional shot taken during Johan's teacher certification process. Prepared, aren't you? Johan quipped, taking the photo. As Johan signed the photo, Koga hesitated for a moment before speaking again. There's something I don't understand, he said, his tone turning serious. Oh. Johan glanced at him curiously. Koga's brow furrowed. My stealth techniques are impeccable. How did Haunter detect me? Johan turned to Haunter, who had been quietly hovering nearby. Haunter grinned mischievously. Caw. He smelled weird. Johan translated with a chuckle. It was your scent. Specifically, the smell of poison. Koga frowned, lifting an arm to sniff himself. It was true. He worked with poison so often that the scent clung to him. But he'd used methods to mask it. How sensitive is Haunter's nose? Koga murmured, incredulous. Johan laughed softly. When you eat as many toxic substances as Haunter does, you tend to develop a taste for it. After handing the signed photo back to Koga, Johan noticed Koga pulling something else from his cloak, a small, black, gooey substance wrapped in a transparent membrane. This is for the trouble I've caused, Koga said, his voice sincere. The item turned out to be a piece of black sludge, a gift Haunter immediately eyed with predatory glee. Johan accepted it with a smile. You're too kind, Koga. As Koga turned to leave, he glanced at his wheezing and froze. The once robust Pokémon now looked utterly drained, wobbling weakly in the air. Nearby, Haunter was practically glowing with vitality, its form noticeably bulkier than before. Caw. Haunter whistled innocently, feigning ignorance. What happened? Koga demanded, his tone sharp. Haunter shrugged. We played a game of rock, paper, scissors. Loser tries to poison the winner. It was mutual. Wheezing weakly nodded in agreement. Johan face-bombed. You're impossible, Haunter. Koga rubbed his temples. You know. I think I understand my daughter's critique now. Later, on a hillside just outside Blackthorn City, Koga stood alone, speaking into a phone. Yes, I've met him, he said quietly. And I think he might be a better fit for the organization than me. The dilapidated house. Johan hired a local construction team in Blackthorn City for repairs. Team looked extremely professional, equipped not only with top-tier machinery but also with Pokémon like Machoke and Girder assisting the work. When Johan inquired, he discovered something unexpected. The team was from Devon Corporation. He couldn't help but marvel at the situation. Devon Corporation, the infrastructure overlord, had finally extended its reach into Sylph Company's territory. After all, Sylph Company didn't dabble in construction. But for Johan, this turned out to be a blessing. Flashing his Devon Special Consultant badge, he managed to negotiate a steep discount with the construction team's leader. As for the Dragon Clan members who came to investigate the commotion, Johan dismissed their concerns with a simple excuse, a mishap during Pokémon training. However, the skeptical looks he received lingered until one of them muttered, as expected of one of Master Lance's friends. It was then Johan realized, this construction team was probably on retainer thanks to Lance's frequent incidents. With the repairs underway, Johan took his 4 Pokémon out for a stroll through the city. They were already quite familiar with Blackthorn streets, so their destination was clear: the food district. Dratini was brimming with curiosity, its gaze darting around as they walked. It had likely spent most of its life in the dragon's den and wasn't accustomed to bustling city life. But it didn't take long for Johan to fully grasp the meaning of luck balance. In just the short walk from the Dragon Clan to the marketplace, Dratini had stepped into 2 puddles, nearly fallen into a storm drain, and tripped over a loose cobblestone. Fortunately, the little one seemed used to such misfortunes. Dratini didn't complain, sulk, or curse its seemingly innate bad luck aura. Instead, after every mishap, it would straighten up and mutter words of self-encouragement. A strong Pokémon never relies on luck. This filled Johan with a sense of bittersweet admiration. Dratini's resilience was even more impressive than its status as a pseudo-legendary Pokémon. It was hard to imagine how many setbacks it had endured over its life, but it had chosen to remain optimistic rather than give in to despair. That spirit alone was something truly remarkable. New shop opening. Grand discounts. Don't miss out. As they entered the food district, an enthusiastic voice called out, "Caw-caw." Haunter pointed toward a lively crowd gathered nearby. Curious, Johan and his Pokémon approached. It was an ice cream stall, managed by a woman with long red hair dressed as a server. She energetically waved customers over, while a Meowth held a sign promoting the business. Behind the stall, a young man with blue hair busily prepared orders. Watching the 3 work in sync, Johan felt a vague sense of familiarity. Before he could dwell on it, Haunter floated forward and raised its claws, signaling for 5 portions. 5 portions? Big customer. The red-haired woman's eyes lit up, and she called excitedly to the back. But then the Meowth noticed Dratini at Johan's side. Its eyes widened, and it quickly tugged at the woman's sleeve. The trio huddled behind the stall, whispering among themselves. Moments later, the red-haired woman emerged, her smile suspiciously wide. "Would you like to try our newest flavor of ice cream? You can sample it in that little grove over there." She gestured toward a small wooded area nearby. "Do they think I'm 3 years old?" Johan sighed inwardly, staring at them. "You're..." Before he could finish, something strange happened. It was as if an unseen switch had been flipped. The 3 exchanged knowing glances, then struck synchronized poses. "Since you've asked so sincerely, we shall graciously tell you. To prevent the universe from being destroyed. To protect the peace of the world. To uphold the evils of truth and love. The lovely, charming villains. Jessie." The red-haired woman discarded her server uniform. "James." The blue-haired man dramatically held up a rose. "Team Rocket, soaring through the galaxy. White holes, a bright tomorrow awaits us." "Meowth, that's right." Johan felt his soul leave his body as his toes curled in secondhand embarrassment. No way. Of all places, he had run into the Team Rocket trio in Blackthorn City. "Hey, Jessie, do I look cool?" James asked, biting down on his rose. "How would I know?" Jessie rolled her eyes. "But I do think our introduction was..." "So great," the 3 shouted in unison, vibrating with excitement. "Are you still selling ice cream?" Johan asked, pressing a hand to his forehead. "Of course. Of course," James stammered. Jessie kicked him, glaring. "What are you talking about? Look at that Dratini. If we deliver such a rare Pokémon to the boss..." Their eyes sparkled simultaneously as they imagined the rewards. Promotion. Pay raise. Leadership roles. "Johan, shouldn't you have a Wobbuffet by now?" Without Wobbuffet, they were missing a vital 10% of their comedic synergy. "Oh, I see. So you're performers?" Johan said suddenly, feigning realization. "You should know the police station is only a minute's drive from here. You might want to choose a different identity for your act." "Wah, what?" The trio stiffened, cautiously glancing at the police station's insignia in the distance. Oh, so this was just a performance. No wonder this stall feels so dedicated. Exactly. Team Rocket openly revealing themselves in Blackthorn City? That's ridiculous. With the Dragon Clan here? They'd never dare. But this ice cream is pretty good. Are you still selling? Yes. Of course, the trio shouted in unison, instantly switching back to their server personas. That was close, James muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. We can't afford to blow our cover, Meowth added nervously. Meanwhile, Johan and his Pokémon quietly left with their ice cream. Watching them leave, Meowth sighed. That guy's a real class act. Yeah, what a nice person, James agreed. Even Jessie nodded in agreement. In the distance, Matori, who had witnessed the entire scene, pinched the bridge of her nose in frustration. How do you not recognize the target standing right in front of you? She exhaled deeply and decided to follow Johan into a nearby restaurant. Inside, Matori approached Johan's table, smiling politely. Hello, Mr. Johan. I'm Matori, an assistant to Mr. Giovanni. May I join you? Johan blinked, then casually motioned to the seat. Ah, you're one of us. No need to be formal. Sit. One of us? Tori's heart skipped a beat. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Giovanni to express our gratitude and to reimburse you for the treatment of his Nidoqueen. She placed a check on the table, but along with it, something else slipped from her pocket. Clink. It was a bright red our insignia badge. Johan froze. Matori feigned surprise. Oh my, did I drop something? Her acting was abysmal. Johan let out a long sigh. So this is a test? He maintained a calm facade, pocketed the check, and smiled warmly. Would you like to join us for lunch, Ms. Matori? Afterward, as Matori made her report to Giovanni, she hesitated. What had Johan really meant by one of us? Finally, recalling their conversation, she simply said, He referred to us as one of us. If Johan had been there, he would have muttered, Do you work for the tabloids or something? After eating and drinking their fill, Johan headed back to the residence with his Pokémon. Team Rocket's trio showed up, so Ash should be around here too, right? Johan was perplexed. After all, he'd only recently crossed paths with Blue. There was no way the Rocket trio would try to steal Red's Pikachu, right? That electric mouse isn't exactly what you'd call cooperative. Struggling to make sense of this mishmash of events, Johan decided not to dwell on it. And he resolved, Unless absolutely necessary, I'm staying put from now on. Who knows who I'll bump into next? Fortunately, the residence lent to him by the Dragon Clan was spacious, complete with a beautiful garden where Haunter and the others could burn off energy and train. For Haunter, Vulpix, and Tinkatuff, their training routines were well established, requiring little oversight from Johan. When not training, they indulged in their respective hobbies. Haunter loved using Substitute and Nightshade to play hide-and-seek in the house. Johan suspected the self-proclaimed King of Fear would terrify an unwitting visitor into fainting if given half the chance. He sometimes mused about opening a haunted house. With Haunter alone, he could run a wildly successful operation. Meanwhile, Vulpix and Tinkatuff had developed a peculiar dynamic, one building snowmen, the other gleefully smashing them. They made such a good team that Johan thought they could run an ice cream parlor. The only wild card was Dradny. Training focused on the basics while working to build rapport with Johan. There was no rush. However, Johan did notice one of Dradny's quirks. It adored anything soft. It would roll blissfully in soft grass whenever it found some. Dradny. Dry-eye. Lounging on the lawn, the little dragon raised its head and looked at Johan curiously. In his hand, Johan held a small, ancient-looking Fong and a Move tutor device. Dry-eye. Oh! The sight of the dragon Fong, Dradny perked up instantly, slithering excitedly toward Johan. Thud! In its eagerness, it didn't notice a whole Vulpix had dug and tumbled face first into the ground. Johan, Dratini, however, was undeterred. Quickly recovered and wriggled up to Johan, gazing longingly at the Fong and whimpering softly. Johan chuckled and gently dusted off the dirt clinging to its face. Dratini blinked at him, its big eyes glistening. "There's no need to rush. This was always meant for you," Johan said warmly. This Dragon Fong and the Dragon Pulse move tutor had been winnings from a match against Roxanne. He'd figured they'd never see use and left them in storage, never expecting to catch a Dratini. Dratini blinked rapidly, tears brimming in its eyes. Dry eye. For a Pokémon born with an almost comical streak of bad luck, Dratini secretly yearned for care and affection. Johan patted its smooth head gently and said, "From now on, we're family, okay?" Dry eye. Without warning, Dratini coiled itself around Johan, embracing him tightly with its long, sinuous body. Sensing its happiness, Johan tried to reassure it further. But Dratini's coils grew tighter. Wait. Dratini. Don't get so excited. Let me breathe. Snap. Johan. Lance arrived at the garden just in time to see Johan sprawled on the ground, limp from Dratini's loving grip. He chuckled. "You've only had it for a day and you're already this close?" Johan, red-faced, weakly extended a hand in Lance's direction. Took a moment for Lance to realize. Oh, Johan might actually be dying. After a harrowing escape from Dratini's death bind, Johan sat on the grass, gasping for air. If Dratini was this strong now, what would its hugs be like as a Dragonite? Lance handed him a folder. Professor Elm's report just came in. It was an analysis of the magnetic fields around Lake of Rage. Johan skimmed through the document. According to Elm, while the magnetic anomalies caused by the machines were significant, they weren't enough to trigger the transformation in the red Gyarados. He theorized that equipment malfunctions had caused an overload, releasing excessive current and electromagnetic waves which exacerbated Gyarados' condition. So it was an accident? Lance shook his head grimly. I'm not so sure. While Elm's findings suggested a mishap, the true cause remained uncertain. Professor Elm has requested to meet you at his lab to better understand the red Gyarados' condition. Johan hesitated, glancing at Haunter. Timing felt oddly convenient. Haunter, ever perceptive, was also nearing a tipping point. Its usual insatiable appetite had noticeably changed. After consuming a portion of Koga's wheezing and a fragment of black sludge, Haunter had grown significantly larger. The materials, rich in toxicity, seemed to be taking longer to digest, marking Haunter's progress toward an evolutionary threshold. Holding Haunter back from evolving wasn't ideal, it could hinder its growth. No matter how tight Johan's finances got, his Pokémon's well-being came first. I'll go, Johan finally agreed. Lance nodded gratefully. Thanks. You've already done so much for me. Lance lay back on the grass, gazing at the endless blue sky. Johan, do you think there'll ever be a time when humans and Pokémon live together as freely as the clouds? Johan lay back as well, letting the tranquility of the moment wash over him. There will be, he said softly. Lance's question reminded him of someone he hadn't seen in a long time, a certain mathematical magician. People like Lance, the magician, Cynthia, Red, and Ash made it seem less like a dream and more like an eventuality. Lance smiled. I've submitted a request to take on a covert mission once Gyarados recovers. Johan's heart sank. Covert mission? Was Lance planning to infiltrate Team Rocket? 2 days later, the red Gyarados' condition had stabilized. Though still irritable, it had acknowledged Lance as its trainer. From here on, recovery would involve a regimen of soothing audio and gradual psychological rehabilitation. With Gyarados in good hands, Johan boarded a plane from Blackthorn City to Saffron City, en route to Elm's lab at Bill's Lighthouse. The location of Bill's research was notoriously ambiguous. In the anime, he resided at Bill's Lighthouse, and in the games, He worked out of Sea Cottage in northeast Kanto at times. He was based in Johto's Goldenrod City. Luckily, after some inquiries, Johan confirmed Bill was currently at the lighthouse. Elsewhere in Saffron City, a burst of flames illuminated a cozy apartment as a plume of fragrant smoke filled the air. Alakazam! The mustachioed psychic Pokémon used its powers to gather the smoke and wafted out an open window. Well done, Alakazam! Wearing an apron, a tall, sharp-eyed girl flipped food in a frying pan. She glanced at Alakazam, who scratched the back of its head bashfully. Not long ago, this girl had been a cold, aloof psychic prodigy, wielding her powers with terrifying recklessness. But now she seemed almost human. This was Sabrina, gym leader of Saffron City and one of Team Rocket's top operatives. Alakazam, grab me a soda. Also, the movie's over, put on another. Despite her newfound warmth, some of her arrogance lingered. Still, Alakazam couldn't complain. Compared to the tyrant she used to be, Sabrina now resembled an angel. Thanks. Sabrina popped the soda open, downing it in one go. Her latest obsession was cooking and making others eat her creations. Her father had recently taken to leaving the house early and coming home late to avoid her experiments. But Alakazam had no such luck. It's tamarind and persim berry chicken wings. Try it. Sabrina beamed. The dish looked unrecognizable. Alakazam felt its knees tremble. Before it could take a bite, both Sabrina and Alakazam froze. Their psychic senses flared as they detected a presence approaching the city. Sabrina's eyes narrowed. Let's go. Alakazam sighed in relief, grateful for the sudden distraction. Saved for now. Kanto Region, Saffron City. Saffron City was the largest and most developed city in all of Kanto, and this was Johan's first visit. The moment he stepped out of the airport, he could feel the stark contrast between Saffron and Blackthorn City. It wasn't that Blackthorn was underdeveloped, it was just that, compared to Saffron, it felt like moving from a small town to a bustling metropolis. Towering skyscrapers lined the skyline, and the streets were alive with cars, people, and Pokémon of all kinds. Pokémon were incredibly diverse, some native to Kanto, others from Johto, and even some from far-off regions like Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, and Kalos. Carrying Vulpix in his arms and flanked by Haunter, Johan made his way toward White Cove. Known as a romantic spot for couples, the cove was also a popular tourist destination. Goo-woot! The Vulpix in Johan's arms stirred, rubbing its eyes and yawning softly. Awake now? Johan teased, ruffling its fur affectionately. Ooh! Hashtag. Annoyed at its now messy fur, Vulpix growled, baring its little fangs, which only prompted Johan to double down on ruffling its fur. Vulpix's soft, silky coat was becoming more and more addictive to touch, Johan mused. Oddly enough, while he could sense Haunter reaching a point where evolution might soon happen, Vulpix seemed to be making no such progress. Perhaps it was because Vulpix required a firestone to evolve. Or maybe it was because Haunter had been dormant for a millennium, accumulating much more energy than Vulpix. As Johan pondered these things, absent-mindedly petting Vulpix, a sharp, cold presence brushed against his senses. Caw-caw! Both Haunter and Vulpix reacted before Johan, turning their gazes toward a young woman standing not far away. She had long black hair, a form-fitting red outfit, and glossy black tights. A Kadabra floated by her side, its spoon gleaming faintly with psychic energy. Her confident smirk gave her identity away immediately. Sabrina, Saffron City's gym leader. One of Team Rocket's 3 executive officers. Johan sighed inwardly. First Koga. Then the Rocket Trio. Then Midori. Now Sabrina? Johan couldn't help but wonder, what's Giovanni trying to pull here? Before Johan could say a word, Sabrina spoke. Grain in the field? She asked, her tone equal parts amused and curious. Johan blinked, startled. Sabrina seemed to take his silence as confirmation. I thought I recognized the signature, my calm mind techniques lingering around Saffron. Turns out it's you. Johan's mind clicked into place. She wasn't here under Giovanni's orders. She knew him from somewhere else. Testing his theory, Johan ventured cautiously. Supernatural girl? At the nickname, Sabrina's elegant expression cracked slightly, and her pale cheeks turned a soft pink. The embarrassment in her eyes confirmed Johan's suspicion. Oh no. Giovanni. Midori. Sabrina. Unknowingly, Johan had ended up connected with so many rocket executives through his online consultations for Pokémon with psychological issues. If he added Mewtwo to that mix, if Officer Jenny came knocking, I'd never explain my way out of this. Johan resolved to meticulously audit his online friends list when he got home. Surely it couldn't have more rocket members, right? Sabrina's gaze flicked to the Pokémon at Johan's side, Haunter and Vulpix. Her eyebrows arched in faint surprise. These two weren't psychic types, but they had latent potential and psychic energy that outshone most true psychic Pokémon. As an expert in the field, Sabrina's keen eyes quickly picked up on their hidden talents. Then she turned back to Johan, tilting her head slightly. Here to challenge my gym? Johan froze, unsure how to respond. Before he could open his mouth, Haunter stepped in, donning a pair of sunglasses and waving dismissively. Caw. No time today. Sabrina narrowed her eyes, her psychic aura flaring faintly as her long hair began to float. Vulpix tensed, jumping onto Johan's head, its 6 tails fanning out as it prepared to counter the energy with its own latent psychic resonance. Beside Sabrina, Kadabra gripped its spoon tightly, a nervous glint in its eyes. Kadabra muttered to itself, if this escalates, there's no way I'm walking away unscathed. Kadabra had a vested interest in keeping things civil. At home, Sabrina's cooking experiments were enough to terrify it. The last thing it wanted was more trouble. Johan quickly stepped in. What are you all doing? Looking for a fight, he barked. Vulpix wilted under his scolding, its tails drooping as it licked his cheek apologetically. Sabrina blinked, startled by his sudden assertiveness, and let her psychic aura dissipate. Kadabra froze, nearly dropping its spoon in shock. Oh. Caw. Haunter snickered, seemingly amused by the tension. Johan sighed and waved a hand dismissively. Sorry, we're busy today. Maybe tomorrow or the day after I'll swing by your gym. Sabrina raised an eyebrow, about to retort. I'll even teach you a recipe, Johan added casually. Kadabra, Haunter, and Vulpix all froze. Recipe? To their astonishment, Sabrina's frosty demeanor thawed almost instantly. Her nose wrinkled slightly and she folded her arms. Who needs your recipes? I'm already a great cook, okay? Though her words protested, the spark of interest in her eyes was unmistakable. Caw. Haunter scratched its head. What just happened? Kadabra, however, felt its heart sink. Great. I guess we're eating another culinary masterpiece soon. After a moment of sulking, Sabrina muttered, Fine. Teach me the hardest one, you know. Deal, Johan said with a smile. Her mood brightened considerably. Sabrina hesitated, then added, I don't want to owe you, so how about I teach your Haunter how to use psychic energy in return? Both Johan and Haunter blinked in surprise. Psychic energy? Satisfied with herself, Sabrina turned to Kadabra. Kadabra groaned inwardly, but with a resigned sigh activated teleport, whisking Sabrina away. Before disappearing, Kadabra shot Johan a look that he didn't quite understand. You're our only hope. As the pair vanished, Johan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Turning to his Pokémon, he said sternly, The next time this happens, keep calm. No rushing into fights. Be like me, stay composed and prioritize peace. Haunter blinked, then floated over and poked Johan's back. Caw. You're drenched in sweat. Ooh. Vulpix burst out laughing, its tails wagging with delight. Haunter joined in, cackling uncontrollably. Johan. After a moment, Vulpix spoke softly. Ooh. I don't think she really wanted to fight. I didn't feel any malice from her or Kadabra. Haunter nodded in agreement. Caw. True. Did seem that way. Really? Johan asked, skeptical. After a brief pause, Haunter voiced another question. Caw. But how did you know one dish would win her over? Johan chuckled knowingly. Every time I post a picture of my cooking, the same few people always give it the most likes. He ticked off names on his fingers. Cynthia, Metori, Sabrina, Diantha, Lorelai, Steven. Cynthia and Diantha were foodies, but Metori and Sabrina? They just wanted to learn. Through all, Johan had once taught Sabrina to use cooking as a way to bond with Kadabra. Little Sabrina totally handled. Then again, now that Johan thought about it, hadn't nearly every Rocket member, Giovanni included, attempted cooking under his advice at some point? The warm sun, salty breeze, and rhythmic crash of waves made White Cove a scenic paradise. Named for its pristine white sand, the cove was a haven for both humans and Pokémon. Johan kicked off his shoes, enjoying the soft sand beneath his feet. Dratini would probably love this, he mused. He released Dratini and Tinkatuff from their Pokeballs. As soon as it emerged, Dratini happily rolled around in the sand, eyes closed in bliss. Tinkatuff, meanwhile, hefted its hammer and set off on an enthusiastic treasure hunt. Not far off, Haunter spotted a wild Krabby and floated over mischievously. Caw. Wanna play rock, paper, scissors? If I lose, I'll give you a berry. If you lose, I get a claw. Crab? Crab. Krabby tilted its head, utterly baffled. Johan smacked his forehead. You do realize Krabby can only throw scissors, right? The old lighthouse, its walls covered in dust. Knock. Johan tapped lightly on the door. Haunter poked its head through the door. This point, Johan was almost used to Haunter's casual disregard for physical boundaries. Caw. The doors unlocked. Hoo-woo. A sound came from inside, and with a creak, the door slowly swung open. A flash of fiery red appeared. It was a Vulpix. Hoo-woo. The ice Vulpix perched on Johan's head tilted its head in curiosity as it saw the other Vulpix. Hoo-woo. The red Vulpix, peeking out from behind the door, also tilted its head, seemingly equally curious. Thump. The ice Vulpix leapt from Johan's head onto the ground. Two Vulpixes stared at each other, their eyes filled with intrigue. Chew. Tinkatuff rubbed its eyes, confused. Why are there two Vulpixes? Though they don't look exactly the same. This must be Researcher Bill's Vulpix, Johan guessed. Researcher Bill was a renowned figure, one of the greatest Pokémon researchers of his time. He was not only the developer of the Pokémon storage system and time capsule, but also a Pokémon reviewer and an esteemed member of the Pokémon Association. In the Pokémon Adventures manga, Bill was also a skilled trainer, once teaming up with Lieutenant Surge to battle against Elite Four Bruno. And this red Vulpix? It was Bill's loyal Pokémon, primarily tasked with guarding the lighthouse. Still, Johan found himself more impressed with how much the ice Vulpix had grown. The once shy, timid little fox that couldn't approach strangers or Pokémon had now taken the initiative to greet another Pokémon. While it was true that the red Vulpix being another Vulpix helped ease the introduction, it was undeniable that the ice Vulpix had come a long way. Although it wasn't timid anymore, but it had grown noticeably more cautious. Ooh-woo. Two Vulpixes quickly became acquainted, their tails wagging happily. Vulpix, is someone here? Came Bill's voice from inside. Researcher Bill, it's me, Johan. Oh, Johan? Come in. I'm a bit busy at the moment. At his invitation, Johan carefully stepped inside. The interior was as cluttered as he expected. Books and devices piled haphazardly, many of them collecting layers of dust. The dim lighting added an air of gloom to the space. Reminding his Pokémon not to touch anything, Johan ventured deeper into the lighthouse. Soon he found Bill. Professor was drenched in sweat, struggling to take off what looked like a Magikarp costume. Johan paused, bewildered. Although it wasn't the familiar Omanite suit, it still perfectly matched the image he had of Bill in his mind. At least, it wasn't some hybrid fusion of Rattata or Nidorino. Caca. Haunter, however, seemed thrilled. Floated up to Bill and examined him closely. A moment later, its outline shifted and it transformed into a black Magikarp, complete with its tongue sticking out. Bill stared in surprise. You like cosplay too? Caw. Haunter grinned. When it comes to transformations, I'm a pro. With this shared interest, the man and Pokémon clicked instantly, grinning at each other. Ahem. Johan couldn't help but clear his throat. Oh, sorry about that, Johan, Bill said, snapping back to reality. Scratching his curly brown hair in embarrassment, he finally managed to wriggle out of the Magikarp suit. I was experimenting with the device you and Lance sent over. I was curious about how a Magikarp would react to a unique magnetic field, so I... Got it. Totally understand. No, he didn't. This wasn't an experiment, this was plain eccentricity. Bill was a confirmed oddball. By the way, that equipment you sent solved a huge problem for me, Bill exclaimed, wiping sweat from his brow. Ha! Johan recalled that Cynthia had mentioned that Bill's communications device wasn't entirely stable. It had potential failures that could harm Pokémon. Now, with the help of Rocket's research materials, it was somehow perfect? Bill launched into a technical explanation, his passion lighting up the room. That machine is incredibly specialized. Some parts of it are designed specifically to stimulate Pokémon evolution, which was precisely what my earlier models lacked. Mid-sentence, Bill seemed to realize something. Sorry. I think I'm rambling, he said sheepishly. He gestured toward a large machine nearby. The contraption had 2 platforms on either side, likely meant for Pokeballs. This is the communications device. Once I finalize the parameters, it'll be complete. With that, Bill turned his eager gaze toward Johan. Johan pulled out a folder, a set of additional data that Lance had asked him to deliver. Thanks, Bill said, his eyes lighting up as he grabbed the folder. Just a moment. While I adjust the device, why don't you tell me about that red Gyarados? Johan took the opportunity to recount the details, sparing no effort since this involved Haunter's evolution. Evolution is irreversible, Johan. Are you and Haunter ready? Bill asked abruptly while tweaking the machine. Ready? Johan turned to Haunter. The ghost Pokémon gazed back, its mischievous grin unwavering. It blinked once, then twice. Suddenly, its smile stretched even wider. Caca. Ready? What's to prepare? Let's do this. Johan chuckled. Typical Haunter. Actually, Haunter had thought this through more than anyone might imagine. It had seen Johan work hard to provide for them, raising the 4 of them despite all the challenges. Haunter thought to itself. Lance, Steven, Cynthia, they all win big tournaments with their Pokémon. If I can become that strong, Johan could finally earn rewards without breaking his back, right? Haunter's mind also lingered on a memory from long ago. Calm morning, bubbles floating in the air as Johan washed clothes on the balcony. That morning when Johan smiled and said, "Your family." That memory had solidified Haunter's resolve. It wanted to help. Isn't that sweet? Bill said, looking up from his work. In Haunter, I see an unshakable trust in you, Johan, and a bond that's hard to describe. Honestly, I think even if you became a ghost, Haunter would follow you. Johan winced. Couldn't he have phrased that better? Also, Haunter, why are you nodding? Well, if you're ready, then let's begin, Bill said, grabbing a Pokeball, the key to a successful trait evolution. This is it? Johan asked. No more tests. Don't worry. It's just final data adjustments. Bill waved off the concern, brimming with confidence. Besides, I've personally tested it. Works like a charm. Personally, a bead of sweat formed on Johan's temple. Was this really okay? Till Bill was the foremost expert on trait evolutions. Johan didn't have much choice. Ka. Haunter was already pacing in circles, practically vibrating with anticipation. Johan took a deep breath, withdrew Haunter into its pokeball and stepped up to the machine. Let's do this. Bill and Johan placed the pokeballs into the device's trays on either side. As Bill activated the machine, it began to hum and whir. WHRR. WHRRR. Johan couldn't help but worry. What if something went wrong? What if Haunter came out as some bizarre fusion like Haunt-Ada or Ghostal? Bill studied the machine, muttering, what is it? Your Haunter. It's unusually strong. The amount of untapped potential it has is astonishing. Well, of course. This was a 1,000-year-old ghost with a penchant for sneaky snacks and rare treats. Are you sure this is safe? For the last time, yes. It's perfectly safe. Bill insisted, slamming his hands on the machine. Even so, Johan couldn't ignore the growing turbulence. From his pocket, Johan's phone lit up. Young man. A faint crimson eye flickered on the screen. Young man, does my alt need help? Click. The machine hissed as white steam billowed out. Finally, the pokeballs reappeared, sitting quietly in their trays. Bill exhaled in relief. Success! Johan grabbed Haunter's pokeball, his hands trembling slightly. Go ahead, Bill encouraged. Taking another deep breath, Johan pressed the button to release his Pokémon. A burst of black mist surged out, filling the room with an eerie chill. The fog was thick, the temperature plummeting. Within the mist, Johan thought he saw a shadow, something large and dragon-like. Wait, was that Giratina? Whoosh! The dark mist quickly condensed into a vibrant purple form, surrounded by dazzling white light. Purple and white intertwined, a silhouette taking shape. Ka. The voice was different, yet unmistakably familiar. Jengar. The purple round buddy had arrived, shining in all its mischievous glory. Its body was round and dark purple, with small stubby arms and legs. Spiky protrusions jutted from its back, along with a short, stubby tail. Jengar. The newly evolved Jengar grinned wide, flashing rows of perfectly white teeth that stood out starkly against its body's deep purple hue. Kaka. The king of your nightmares is back. Bill shivered involuntarily, rubbing his arms. Titch, this is Jengar. It's so cold in here. Jengar looked down at its left hand, then its right. Slowly, it clenched its fist. I feel so much stronger now. It opened its fist again, and a swirling jet-black shadow ball appeared. Cackling wickedly, Jengar hurled the shadow ball, straight into its own mouth. Bill. Next, Jengar raised its stubby legs, inspecting them carefully. Kaka. Paused, sensing something behind it, and twisted around to look. Its stubby tail wagged back and forth with little choo-choo-choo noises. Kaka. I can't see it. Click. Johan whipped out his phone, capturing the adorable moment. In no time, he uploaded the picture online with the caption, "Terrifying Jengar wagging its tail." Honestly, even a far-fetched could learn Iron Tail, but not Jengar? That seemed unfair. However, now that Haunter had evolved into Jengar, Johan's phone storage was doomed. It would soon be overflowing with Jengar reaction memes. Jengar leaned closer to Johan, using the photo to finally get a glimpse of its own backside. Kaka. A tail? What do you think? Pretty cute, huh? Johan teased, waving his phone. Cute? Bill took a step back, wiping sweat off his forehead. Kaka. Terrifyingly, Jengar broke into another creepy grin. If Johan said it was cute, then it was cute. Having a tail wasn't so bad, it could even play tail tag with Ice Vulpix and Dratini later. Jengar's crimson eyes twinkled mischievously. Extending its long, red tongue, it gave Johan's face a big, wet lick. Caw. Johan, who had been smiling seconds earlier, suddenly froze. Paralysis was real. Paralyzed? Do we need a sherry berry? Bill panicked, rifling through his supplies. But Johan, his hand trembling from paralysis, calmly retrieved a sherry berry from his pocket. Despite his shaky fingers, he deftly popped the berry into his mouth. Crunch. Juice trickled down his chin. Wow. You're awfully experienced with this, Bill murmured. Jengar stuck out its tongue in a teasing manner. Caw. Am I strong now or what? Johan, recovering from the paralysis, gave Jengar a big thumbs up. When it came to paralysis effects, Jengar's lick wasn't just strong, it was overwhelming. As Jengar proudly displayed its abilities, Johan pulled up its updated Pokédex entry. Jengar. Type, Ghost/Poison. Ability, Cursed Body. Held items, Toxic Orb Spell Tag. Moves, Will-O-Wisp, Haze, Toxic, Hex, Substitute, Protect, Shadow Punch, Nasty Plot, Shadow Ball, Dream Eater, Nightshade, Ice Punch, Sucker Punch. Mood, Excited, Confused. Wait, I have a tail. Status, Excellent, energized by unknown power, feeling amazing. Friendship, 100, it adores you, plain and simple. Just as Johan suspected, Jengar's ability had changed to Cursed Body. Cursed Body, when hit by an opponent's move, there's a chance to disable that move temporarily. But still, why did Jengar lose its Levitate ability? Levitate had been so useful, granting immunity to ground-type moves. Now, as a Poison-type Pokémon, Jengar had developed a 2x weakness to ground moves. Felt like the world was out to get it. On the bright side, Jengar had learned the Dark-type move Sucker Punch. While it was a physical attack, not perfectly suited to Jengar's build, Johan's Jengar had practiced physical moves before. A punching Jengar wasn't out of the question, and Sucker Punch added some versatility to its moveset. What intrigued Johan most, however, was a note in Jengar's status section. Energized by unknown power, feeling amazing. What unknown power? He frowned. If it's feeling so great, where's the explosion move? Thankfully, Jengar's condition was marked as excellent. Jengar, meanwhile, had discovered a troubling realization. Caw. Wait. Why can't I float anymore? Don't worry, Johan reassured it. That's because your ability changed from Levitate to Cursed Body. You can still fly, it'll just take some practice. Jengar's crimson eyes sparkled at the challenge. Crouched down, stubby legs bent, and leapt into the air. Flapping its arms wildly like a cartoon character, it tried to stay airborne. Johan chuckled. Just as Jengar began to drop, it gritted its teeth and flailed harder. Wisps of ghostly energy seeped from its body, and before long it hovered mid-air. Impressive learning curve, Bill remarked. Floating successfully, Jengar crossed its arms over its chest and cackled triumphantly. Caw. 3 seconds later, it crashed face-first into the ground. Undeterred, Jengar scratched its head, its expression puzzled but determined. Johan mused aloud. Maybe with some psychic energy it'd be easier. Caw. Jengar's eyes gleamed. Psychic energy, huh? Nearby, Ice Vulpix and the others had finally shaken off their surprise at Jengar's evolution. They approached curiously. Ice Vulpix poked Jengar's body with a paw, and it went straight through. Tinkatuff inspected Jengar's form with its hammer, as if searching for magnetic properties. Dratini puffed up its cheeks, trying to mimic Jengar's round shape. Johan held back a laugh. No need to mimic Dratini. Once you evolve into Dragonite, you'll look just as round. Later, Bill used an array of complicated devices to gather data on Jengar's new form. With Bill busy, Johan took his Pokémon to White Strait. The setting sun kissed the ocean, casting a rosy glow over the sky, sea, and sand. Johan rolled up his pants and stepped barefoot onto the beach, letting the cool waves lap at his ankles. Jengar splashed in the water, flailing its arms and legs enthusiastically, spraying droplets everywhere. Caw-caw! Dratini surfaced from the waves, its tail curled around a piece of coral, proudly showing it off. Unbeknownst to Dratini, a shell was now stuck atop its head. Found some shells, huh? What do you guys think, seafood feast tonight? Johan asked, grinning. At the mention of food, all 4 Pokémon perked up. Suddenly, a wave crashed over Dratini, sweeping it under. Blub, blub, blub. Dratini resurfaced moments later, a defiant glint in its eye and a shell clenched in its jaws. Teams sprang into action, collecting their haul for the feast. That night, a bonfire lit the beach. Bill's Vulpix had started the fire, while Ice Vulpix had crafted a small icy mountain to keep the seafood chilled. The feast included clams, shrimp, fish, and more. Bill sat cross-legged beside Johan, popping a piece of sashimi into his mouth. Honestly, I've been here at White Strait for ages, but this is my first time enjoying seafood like this. He handed Johan a report. Jengar's in phenomenal shape. It's probably the most well-conditioned Pokémon I've ever seen post-evolution. Jengar suddenly popped out from the shadows, pulling faces and wagging its tongue. Bill turned pale, but Johan just laughed, tossing it a piece of sashimi. Jengar caught it happily and gestured at Johan. Caw-caw, wanna join me in the shadows? It's fun in here. Not a chance, Johan replied dryly. Suddenly, a haunting, drawn-out cry echoed from the misty ocean. Oh, whoa! Dratini's head snapped up, its eyes alert. Bill leapt to his feet, excitement brimming. It's here! Through the fog, an enormous silhouette began to emerge. Johan's eyes narrowed. An enormous dragonite? Ooh, dry-eye. Near the strait by Bill's lighthouse, Dratini called out toward the enormous shadow in the mist. See, can it communicate? Bill exclaimed, visibly thrilled. The shadow looming in the fog was one of the main reasons he had established his laboratory here. Caw-caw. Jengar also called out to the shadow, flailing its stubby arms enthusiastically like it was saying hello. Vulpix and Tinkatuff, on the other hand, were just as puzzled and astonished as Bill. A shadow that massive, was it really a Pokémon? So, just how big would it have to be? Jengar, you can understand it too? Johan asked, a bit surprised. He knew the enormous shadow was actually a gigantic dragonite. But if ordinary Pokémon could communicate with it, Bill wouldn't have spent so much time here, nor would he still have no information about the giant dragonite. Ice Vulpix and Tinkatuff's reactions also made it clear that not just any Pokémon could understand. It made sense for Dratini to understand. It was of the same species line. But Jengar? Caw-caw, you guys don't understand? Jengar tilted its head in confusion. Ice Vulpix, Tinkatuff, and Bill's own Vulpix all nodded in unison. I've long suspected it's a Pokémon, but I've tried countless methods and still couldn't communicate with it. Bill explained. Jengar grinned sheepishly, as if suddenly realizing something. Caw-caw. Oh, right. I forgot, it's speaking an ancient language. Ancient language? So Dratini could understand because of its time in the Dragon Sanctuary. As for Jengar, being a 1,000-year-old ghost, it might not remember its past, but it wasn't surprising for it to retain some ancient knowledge. Ooh! The deep, resonant cry of the giant dragonite echoed once more. Dry-eye. Dratini's eyes lit up with excitement. Jengar cupped its hands around its mouth and shouted loudly. Caw-caw. After yelling, Jengar puffed out its cheeks, letting ghostly energy swell within its body. It then began to wobble upward, swimming through the air. Be careful, Johan warned, immediately realizing what Jengar intended to do. Caw-caw. Jengar flashed an okay sign and grinned mischievously. Then, with its signature wicked laugh, it began to float toward the giant dragonite. Jengar is... Bill started. Going to collect a gift, Johan replied. A G-gift? Bill blinked in confusion, then hurriedly added, Jengar, could you also collect some data for me? He retrieved an old Pokédex, a bright red one from the early generation, and handed it to Gengar with a pleading look. Caw. Gengar thumped its chest in agreement, snatched the Pokédex with its tongue, and resumed its swim toward the giant Dragonite. Soon it disappeared into the mist. Dry-eye. Dratini let out a soft, disappointed whimper, its excitement fading. Seemed to have heard something from the giant Dragonite that dampened its mood. Johan patted Dratini gently on the head. The giant Dragonite had been wandering the seas in search of its companions. Every now and then it would return to this spot and call out, but it had never received an answer. Calls from Dratini and Gengar had given the Dragonite a glimmer of hope, but it realized they weren't its long-lost companions. Still, the fact that someone could understand it seemed to lift its spirits. In the fog, the massive shadow gradually receded. Gengar soon returned, strolling back nonchalantly through the air. It was clear that Gengar was quickly mastering the art of energy-assisted flight. Caw. The grinning Gengar gave Bill a reassuring pat on the shoulder, then spat out the Pokédex, drenched in ghostly saliva. Bill didn't even flinch. He snatched the Pokédex eagerly and opened it. His eyes widened. Dragonite? A Dragonite that enormous? Clutching the Pokédex like a priceless treasure, he dashed back toward the lighthouse to analyze the data. Left alone by the strait, Johan turned to Gengar. Don't tell me you went all that way just to collect a few photos and some data. He knew Gengar too well. This was the kind of Pokémon that wouldn't hesitate to snatch a feather from a passing bird. Gengar chuckled slyly. Caw. You know me too well. Gestured for Johan and the others to gather around. Once they were close, Gengar pried its mouth open wide, reached inside, and rummaged around. Its eyes sparkled as it pulled out a massive object. Dry-eye. Everyone stared in shock at what Gengar had retrieved. A giant dragon scale that shimmered with a faint glow, its colors shifting in a gradient. Even Johan, usually unshakable, was stunned. The scale radiated an aura of power, its size and brilliance unparalleled. Gengar handed the scale to Dratini. Among Johan's Pokémon, only Dratini had the potential to digest something like this. Dratini sniffed the scale cautiously, then exhaled in relief. It didn't smell like Gengar's saliva. Fortunately, Gengar had stored the scale in its spatial dimension, not directly in its mouth. Did you pluck this off the Dragonite? Johan asked suspiciously. Caw. Gengar wagged a finger with a smug grin, mimicking the cheeky mannerisms of a certain iconic movie character. Cackled, reached back into its dimension, and pulled out another massive dragon scale. 2 scales. With a satisfied pat of its belly, Gengar indicated there was nothing left. Even so, these 2 enormous dragon scales were worth dozens, if not hundreds, of ordinary scales. That night, as the Pokémon enjoyed their feast, Johan's thoughts drifted. Ancient Pokémon in Kanto aren't limited to this Dragonite, right? He remembered stories from the anime, the colossal Gengar and Alakazam that clashed, and the gigantic Jigglypuff that appeared later. These were all ancient Pokémon. Gengar might actually be able to communicate with them. But he quickly dismissed the thought. Too dangerous. Gengar found out about them, things could spiral out of control. The next morning, Johan was rudely awakened by a lick from Gengar. The night before, he'd had a bizarre dream. Gengar, having undergone Mega Evolution, challenged Giratina to a fight. Armed with Ice Punch, it pummeled Giratina mercilessly and tore off a chunk of the dragon's scales, devouring them to claim their power. Afterward, it declared itself Ghostina and pranced around in triumph. Strange dream, Johan muttered, rubbing his tingling cheek. It must have been a lingering impression from the ghostly shadow he saw during Gengar's evolution. Later, he found Bill, who looked absolutely exhausted but brimming with excitement. Did you even sleep last night? Johan asked. Johan, Bill cried, rushing up to him. Grabbing Johan by the shoulders, he pleaded, Could you do me a favor? Johan blinked. What favor? Bill produced the old Pokédex from before. "Please deliver this to Professor Oak in Pallet Town." Then, as if remembering something, he rummaged through a pile of junk and handed Johan a TM as compensation. "Here's your reward, please, I'm counting on you." With that, Bill's eyes rolled back and he collapsed. "Caca." Jengar tilted its head, poking Bill lightly. "Is he dead?" Johan shot Jengar a look. "He's just passed out from exhaustion." Looking at the items Bill had handed him, Johan sighed. "Pallet Town. Professor Oak. How is my to-do list getting longer and longer?" He glanced at the TM. "TM pain split. Well, at least that's useful." "Vulpix. Hoo. Make sure Bill has a good dream, will you?" In a taxi heading to Saffron City. "For a TM like pain split, it's worth the trip." Pain split adds the HP of the Pokémon and its opponent, then redistributes it evenly. Not only could Jengar learn this move, but so could Vulpix. Pain split was a technique Johan had been trying to acquire for some time, but it had always been hard to find sellers, and when he did, the prices were astronomical. Moves like Pain Split and Perish Song were rare commodities. This particular move suited Jengar's battle style perfectly. While Jengar already had Dream Eater for recovery, it wasn't always feasible to put opponents to sleep. Pain Split bridged that gap effectively. Moreover, Jengar could use Curse or Substitute to reduce its HP before redistributing it with its opponent, causing devastating damage comparable to powerful offensive moves. For Vulpix, learning this move would provide an additional recovery option. "Before heading to Pallet Town, I still have to visit Sabrina in Saffron City." Johan sighed. Sabrina was a handful. Small in stature and, well, small in other areas too. Though Sabrina was an immensely powerful psychic, her straightforward personality made her easier to deal with. Her strong psychic abilities had isolated her from others since childhood, leaving her without normal social experiences. In the original manga, she was tricked by Blue's chest hiding the Pokeball move, a double blow physically and emotionally. Yet later, she worked alongside Blue during the mission to rescue Red. After confirming that Sabrina was his patient's psychic girl, Johan became even more certain of her nature. Sabrina was morally ambiguous, neither purely good nor entirely evil. This was true for most of Giovanni's top executives, including Koga and Lieutenant Surge. Their moral alignment shifted depending on the situation. When no greater villains were present, they were antagonists. But when a larger threat, like the Masked Man, appeared, they became allies of justice. Before he knew it, the taxi had arrived in Saffron City. "Caca!" Jengar suddenly emerged from Johan's shadow, startling the driver. Took Johan a while to convince him they weren't robbers or trying to skip the fare. After they got out, Ice Vulpix burst into laughter, rolling on its back in Johan's arms. Not far from where they exited, Sabrina sat cross-legged on a bench, watching them with a bemused smile. Beside her stood her Alakazam. In Sabrina's lead, Johan and his Pokémon arrived at the Grand Saffron Gym. Once, this bustling metropolis of Kanto boasted two gyms, Sabrina's Psychic-type gym and a fighting dojo. But with Sabrina's rise, her psychic prowess overpowered fighting-type Pokémon, and she defeated the dojo's master, Kyo. After his loss, Kyo left to train on T-Mortar, leading to the fighting dojo's closure. Now, the mention of Saffron Gym was synonymous with Sabrina's psychic gym, infamous for being one of Kanto's toughest. Ice Sea Haunter has evolved into Jengar. "It's grown much stronger," Sabrina remarked, glancing at Jengar, who was curiously exploring the gym. Sabrina, with her strong psychic abilities, could sense far more than Bill ever could. Even her Alakazam seemed aware of Jengar's immense potential. Inside the gym, Sabrina stopped and turned. "So, cooking first or a gym battle?" "Huh? A gym battle?" Johan blinked in confusion. Sabrina floated into the air, crossing her legs. "You don't step into a gym without a battle, do you?" "Wait, when did I agree to this?" Johan thought, dumbfounded. Besides, only through battle can I truly understand Jengar's state and help it awaken its psychic potential. Her reasoning was sound. Johan, too, was curious about Jengar's strength post-evolution, and battling was the quickest way to assess it. He glanced at Jengar, who grinned and nodded confidently. Its battle spirit was palpable. All right, battle it is, Johan relented. Better to battle than risk Sabrina deciding to turn him into a doll if things went south. Sabrina smiled faintly. Very well. Rules: unlimited battle or standard? Johan asked quickly. He had to clarify. If it were unlimited, meaning trainers could join the fight, Sabrina's psychic abilities would overwhelm him, leaving Jengar to fend off both Sabrina and her Pokémon. Sabrina raised her chin slightly. Standard rules, she replied, her tone haughty. Don't worry. I'm just here to observe Jengar's abilities, not to kill you. I won't use Alakazam. Good. Sabrina floated to one side of the battlefield, summoning a Pokeball to her fingertip with psychic energy. When it opened, a humanoid Pokémon appeared. Mr. Mime. Bari. Mr. Mime, the barrier Pokémon, possessed psychic and fairy typing. Sabrina's Mr. Mime was one of her strongest partners. Johan remembered it from the manga, where it single-handedly defeated Bugsy's Pokémon during the Kantajato Gym Leader Tournament. Jengar sunk into the shadows, re-emerging in the arena. Johan acted first. Jengar used Toxic. Jengar grinned wickedly, spitting a glob of corrosive poison toward Mr. Mime. Sabrina's eyes glimmered with psychic energy. Without a word, Mr. Mime reacted. Bari. Conjured an invisible wall. Barrier. The toxic sludge splattered against the translucent barrier, unable to reach its target. But the venom hissed and corroded the barrier's surface. Sabrina's brows furrowed. Such strong poison. As Mr. Mime erected a second barrier, Sabrina smirked. She was ready to counter. Shadow Ball. Johan's command came swiftly. Jengar unleashed 2 Shadow Balls, hurling them at the barrier. The impact sent dust flying. When the smoke cleared, Sabrina's confidence remained unshaken. Mr. Mime had constructed an elaborate, invisible maze of barriers, forming what Sabrina called her hunting room. Trapped inside, Jengar couldn't escape. Mr. Mime launched a powerful psychic attack, aiming directly at Jengar. Boom! Jengar exploded in a burst of smoke. Bari! Mr. Mime paused, confused. Was that a decoy? Johan smiled. Jengar, show Sabrina your ace in the hole. From Mr. Mime's shadow, Jengar emerged with a mischievous grin, holding a massive, pitch-black shadow ball, bigger than itself. Boom! The battlefield erupted. The battle ended much faster than expected. That's typical for Psychic-type and Ghost-type Pokémon battles, both are fragile. While Mr. Mime boasts impressive special defense stats, its low HP is a glaring weakness. Caught off guard by a sneak attack and overwhelmed by an oversized shadow ball, Mr. Mime was knocked out of the fight. Jengar immediately bounced back to Johan's side, its stubby legs propelling it upward for a celebratory high five. Well done. Johan didn't hold back on praising the chubby Pokémon. Sabrina pouted and returned Mr. Mime to its Pokeball, muttering, "That Shadow Ball was way too overpowered." Johan twitched at her words. And Mr. Mime's ability to block Toxic with its barrier was fair? You won! However, Sabrina accepted her loss without throwing a tantrum, much to Johan's surprise. He had been wondering how to handle the situation if Sabrina had acted up. Should he copy Ash from the anime and try offering her a gift? A little prank, maybe? Who-dee? Even Alakazam seemed surprised. While Sabrina had changed a lot, this was the first time it had seen her take a loss so gracefully. Considering Sabrina's strength, she rarely lost battles. Seemed its trainer had truly transformed. All thanks to their benefactor. Alakazam glanced at Johan with eyes brimming with gratitude. Here's your badge. A shiny gold badge floated from Sabrina's hand and landed in front of Johan. First glance, it looked like a small golden coin. This is much nicer than the rising badge from Satopoli's gym. The reason was simple, it was made of solid gold. Though it's probably just a replica, Johan mused. The real badges from the 8 Kanto gyms were said to possess mysterious powers. So far, Johan had collected a stone badge from Hoenn, a rising badge from Johto, and now this golden badge from Kanto. Was he on track to collect one badge from every region? As Johan admired the golden badge, contemplating how much it might be worth, Sabrina used her psychic powers to toss something else his way. It was a TM, a technical machine. Wait. Johan's heart skipped a beat as he realized what it was. Before he could say anything, Sabrina spoke. Your Pokémon already knows Calm Mind, so I'm giving you this instead. It's the TM for Skill Swap. Skill Swap. Skill Swap. Temporarily switches the abilities of 2 Pokémon. Johan's face fell. He opened his mouth to protest, but Gengar acted faster. Delighted, Gengar shot out its tongue, snatching the TM and swallowing it whole. Caca! Oh no! Johan's heart sank. He had tried to be on guard against Sabrina's antics, but he had still been caught off guard by this unexpected gift. Don't overreact. It's just a normal gym reward, Sabrina said with a smirk, dismissing Johan's frozen reaction. Johan opened his mouth but struggled to find the words. Finally, he managed to say, Thanks. I guess. You're welcome. Welcome. Johan took a deep breath, silently vowing to remember this moment. From now on, Sabrina was officially added to his mental list of troublemakers, right above Lance. With the surprisingly swift gym challenge over, Sabrina led Johan and his Pokémon to a spacious room inside the gym. The room was large and appeared to have been a training or meditation area for Sabrina and her Pokémon. In the center stood a chair that felt oddly familiar to Johan. There had been a pile of dolls nearby and Sabrina had been sitting on it. He might have remembered where he had seen it before. Now, however, the space had been repurposed and filled with various furniture and items. One corner featured a kitchen setup complete with a stove, countertops, and utensils, a clear sign Sabrina had been cooking here. In another corner, there was a sizable pool, where a slowpoke lounged by the edge, its tail lazily submerged in the water. Scattered around the room were gadgets and knickknacks that Johan didn't recognize, each appearing oddly intriguing. So, dinner or a bath first? Sabrina asked suddenly. Johan, ? You guys always love this stuff, don't you? My dad had a stash under his bed. Johan? Hold on. Wait. Let me process this. Johan instinctively stepped back, raising his hand in protest. Sabrina burst into laughter. Relax. I'm just messing with you. It's fun to see your reaction. I bet he'd react the same way too. He? Sabrina wouldn't dare joke like this with Giovanni. But with Johan, she had no such qualms. She was simply curious how Giovanni would react in a similar situation. Before you got here, I made something. Come take a look. Sabrina gestured for Johan to join her by the kitchen counter, where she placed a dish on the table. One look at the plate, and Johan's expression turned strange. On the plate was a black, gooey mass. Thankfully, it didn't smell bad. Otherwise, he might have mistaken it for a pile of black sludge. This is stir-fried tomato berries and lumberries with eggplants. Johan. He glanced at Alakazam with pity in his eyes. Kid, how did you survive growing up? Mature and stoic as always, Alakazam now looked on the verge of tears. You poor soul. What do you think? Sabrina asked, her eyes brimming with anticipation. Johan cleared his throat. Well, not bad. I didn't know you had a knack for cooking. The Dark Cuisine Association could use someone like her. Really? Sabrina beamed. It's cold now, but do you want to try some? She used her psychic powers to summon a spoon, offering it to Johan. A bead of cold sweat appeared on Johan's forehead as he contemplated his options. Then he made a decision. Firmly rejecting the spoon, he grabbed the plate, opened Jengar's mouth, and dumped the entire dish inside. Jengar. Pokémon had been watching the scene unfold with amusement, only to be caught completely off guard. Johan clamped Jengar's mouth shut and hurriedly said, "It says it's delicious." "Really?" Sabrina's eyes sparkled with joy as she clenched her fists in excitement. Tears of gratitude welled up in Alakazam's eyes. "Hoodie, you're a true hero, sir." Johan quickly shot Jengar a look. "Use your dimensional pocket now." Understanding his trainer's intent, Jengar let out a muffled gulp and promptly activated its ability, sighing in relief once the dish disappeared. Johan patted Jengar's back reassuringly. "Sorry, buddy. It was either you or me, and I wouldn't have survived." "Caca!" Jengar glared at Johan, baring its teeth in mock anger. Johan felt a twinge of guilt. Fine. I owe you one," he muttered under his breath. But before the tension could subside, Sabrina suddenly perked up. "All right, I've decided." She grabbed her spatula with renewed determination. The dish was cold, so the taste wasn't its best. "I'll make it again." Johan and the Pokémon. "Ooh, chew, ee." Vulpix and Tinkatuff fled in beams of red light as they returned to their Pokeballs. Dratini tripped in its panic, while Jengar found itself restrained by Johan. Alakazam's face turned pale, sweat dripping from its brow. Realizing the stakes, Johan stepped forward, snatching the spatula from Sabrina's hand. "I'm the one teaching you to cook." His voice was firm, resolute, and impossible to argue against. Sabrina blinked at Johan, momentarily stunned. Then, to Johan's surprise, she simply shrugged and handed over the spatula. "Fine." Alakazam let out a long sigh of relief. "What a hero." Not bad." Practically identical. Johan stared at the two plates before him, one with perfectly fried rice he made, and the other a charred, unrecognizable mess Sabrina had produced. He rubbed his chin in thought, nodding in approval. Jengar glanced at the left plate, then at the right one. "Identical? Really?" Johan shot Jengar a look. "Not identical? Then you're eating them both." Jengar Sigma, lol. Caw. Identical. Totally identical. Johan sighed. It was perplexing. The same ingredients, the same instructions. How did Sabrina manage to turn her dish into this? This was after Johan had even told her that fried rice was one of the hardest dishes to perfect, requiring exceptional control of timing, heat, and technique. Are they the same? Sabrina frowned and looked at her Alakazam for confirmation. Chasm. Alakazam, sweating profusely, nodded vigorously, clearly unwilling to cross its master. Fine. Let's split them up. Sabrina reluctantly accepted the reality. Wait. Johan interjected hastily. Everyone just finished eating. Let's take a break first. You promised to help Jengar and Vulpix train their psychic abilities, didn't you? Sabrina rolled her eyes at him. You're so impatient. Why does it matter right now? Johan bit back a retort. Was that really the right phrase to use here? Fortunately, the Pokémon were equally eager to escape the culinary experiment and eagerly followed Sabrina to the training area. They arrived at the designated training space, and Sabrina floated mid-air, lazily resting her chin on her hand. She gestured toward Jengar with a tilt of her head. Let's start with Jengar. Show me your strongest Shadow Ball. Caca. Jengar looked at Johan for confirmation. Johan gave a nod. Go ahead. Jengar grinned mischievously and clasped its hands. A wisp of dark energy appeared, coalescing into a small shadow ball. Then it grew. And grew. Caca. As the black orb swelled to an enormous size, Alakazam, standing by Sabrina, narrowed its eyes in focus. Even Sabrina raised an eyebrow. So this is Jengar's true power. Soon, Jengar stood holding a gigantic, glowing shadow ball, far larger than anything Johan had seen before. Not bad, Sabrina muttered, her sharp gaze fixed on the ball of energy. Jengar, that's enough, she said calmly. Caca. Jengar hesitated, glancing nervously at the massive orb. Oh, it had gotten a bit carried away. How was it supposed to get rid of this thing? After much scrambling and the combined efforts of several Pokémon, the oversized shadow ball was finally neutralized. Sabrina then produced a deep purple incense burner, her eyes flashing faintly as a curl of white smoke began to rise from it. Odd incense? Odd incense enhances the power of psychic-type moves. This is a special incense passed down through generations of psychic users in my family, Sabrina explained. It helps Pokémon or people with untapped psychic potential awaken their abilities. She set the burner before Jengar, letting the smoke waft around it. Jengar sniffed deeply, its red eyes gleaming. Sabrina smiled. It should help Jengar tap into its latent psychic potential. With Alakazam's guidance, it might even learn psychic. Before Johan could respond, she added, "You can keep the incense burner." But the incense sticks themselves are custom-made, 100,000 Poké-dollars per stick. Johan's face turned serious. He knew the price Sabrina quoted wasn't an exaggeration. This was a resource endorsed by one of the strongest psychic users in the Pokémon world. In terms of psychic prowess, Sabrina had few equals. Perhaps Caitlin from the Unova region was one of the rare exceptions. After a moment of thought, Johan raised a finger. 1 recipe per stick. Sabrina beamed. Deal! Both were satisfied with the arrangement. Jengar, energized by the incense, grinned wickedly. Caw-caw. Sabrina then turned her attention to Vulpix. She tossed a handful of silver spoons toward it. Hoo-woo. Vulpix instinctively activated its psychic energy, catching the spoons mid-air with a faint glow. Sabrina looked impressed. Vulpix's psychic potential surpasses Jengar's. Johan had suspected as much. Vulpix's psychic abilities had awakened naturally and were already potent despite minimal training. With Sabrina's guidance, Vulpix could refine its control and amplify its strength. Under Sabrina's instruction, Vulpix began a new training regimen, one she called the Dream Meditation Technique. Meanwhile, Jengar worked with Alakazam on awakening its latent psychic powers, focusing on mastering psychic. However, Johan couldn't shake the feeling that Jengar and Alakazam's newfound camaraderie was hiding something suspicious. While Sabrina supervised the training, she casually pulled out her phone and started watching a movie. Within minutes, she began critiquing it. This scene makes no sense. The actors are awful. The whole movie is trash. Johan couldn't help but quip. Why don't you try acting? With your looks, you'd do great. Sabrina blinked in surprise, then her eyes lit up. That's not a bad idea. As Johan watched her get excited, he remembered something. In the future, Sabrina did become a successful actress, even making it big in Unova's Pokestar Studios. But before she could dive too deeply into the idea, Sabrina dismissed it with a wave of her hand. Forget it. Most scripts are terrible. Not even Diantha could save some of them. Fair point. Viridian City, outside the gym. Giovanni stood at the edge of a vast forest, his sleeves rolled up as he silently listened to the sounds of nature. Behind him, Matori approached cautiously. Boss. Giovanni opened his eyes, his expression unreadable. Johan has reached Saffron City and met with Sabrina, Matori reported, showing him a photo of Johan and Sabrina cooking together. Giovanni's lips curved into a faint smile. He donned the suit Matori handed him and strode toward Viridian Gym. Arrange a meeting, he said. You want to see Johan? Maori asked, surprised. Giovanni paused, half turning back with a smirk. Why? Can I meet with my private consultant? Viridian City. Sabrina's teleport landed Johan and his Pokémon just outside the city. Johan staggered, his face pale, gripping his stomach. He swore he'd never use teleport for travel again. Caw. Jengar patted Johan's back sympathetically as he struggled to recover. Just as he regained his composure, his phone buzzed. Midori's message read, Midori, Mr. Johan, Giovanni would like to invite you to Viridian Gym for a meeting. Johan sighed deeply. The inevitable has arrived. He glanced at Jengar, who tilted its head in confusion. Caw. Are we challenging the gym? Johan smirked faintly. No. We're going to the Viridian police station first to file a report about a missing valuable. Viridian City Gym. Standing before the massive white brick redwood structure of the Viridian Gym, Johan took a deep breath. Stepping up the pristine white stairs crossing the plaza, he arrived at the gym's entrance. Bang! Before he could knock, the doors opened slowly and Midori, sporting her signature bowl cut, peeked out. Johan-sensei, you're here, she greeted with a polite smile. Stepping aside, she made way for Johan to enter. As if I had a choice. Johan couldn't help but gripe internally. The main reason for his visit was Bill's sudden request. He'd been roped into delivering something to Pallet Town, leaving him little opportunity to refuse. To reach Pallet Town without taking a direct flight, Johan had no choice but to pass through Viridian City. What Johan hadn't expected was that Giovanni, after sending Midori, Koga, and the infamous Rocket Trio to test the waters, would also want to meet him in person. The thought filled him with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He wasn't too worried about Giovanni harming him. Judging by Giovanni's personality, it seemed far more likely he'd try to recruit him. In the Pokémon Adventures manga, Giovanni even went so far as to disguise himself as a fossil collector to interact with Red and extend an invitation before resorting to combat. Even after Red defeated Giovanni, the latter offered aid during Red's battle with Lance. So, rather than fearing for his safety, Johan was more concerned about one specific scenario. What if Giovanni reveals his true identity? That would put Johan in a tough spot. But for now, he maintained a calm and collected demeanor, smiling as he replied, After all, when the boss invites you, how could I refuse? With that, he followed Midori into the gym. Peeking from the bushes. Not far away, Jessie gripped a pair of binoculars, her voice ringing out excitedly. Hey! Did you see that? What exactly am I supposed to be seeing? James replied helplessly. You're the only one with binoculars, Jessie. Exactly, Naya. Meowth chimed in, equally exasperated. The binoculars had been Meowth's creation, but under Jessie's relentless demands, it had been forced to hand them over. I'm talking about that hottie with the Dradney, the one who bought 5 ice creams back in Smoke Ink City. He's the advisor. Recognition dawned on James. Oh, no wonder he told us to be cautious around the League police. He's a cadre. He's a good guy, Naya. Meowth added with a dreamy sigh. And that bowl-cut nerd is clearly scared of him, Jessie observed, feeling triumphant for spotting such a key detail. Inside the gym. As Johan and Midori entered, rows of white incandescent lights clicked on one after the other, illuminating the gym's vast interior. A massive battle arena stretched out before them. The far end stood a middle-aged man in a sleek black suit, his hands tucked into his pockets, exuding an air of quiet sophistication. This was Giovanni, the current gym leader of Viridian City and the leader of Team Rocket. But to Johan's surprise, Giovanni didn't seem as intimidating as he'd imagined. Why? Because Giovanni was crouched on the ground feeding cats. With one hand holding several cat treats, he was surrounded by a Persian and a small group of Meowth. One particularly bold Meowth had even climbed onto Giovanni's arm for a better shot at the snacks. The scene was so unexpectedly wholesome that the tension Johan had felt moments ago melted away. So that's the secret. Guys who like cats usually have gentle personalities. The mystery of Meowth's special treatment in the rocket trio was solved. It must have been personally raised by Giovanni. There was no other explanation for its inclusion in a team otherwise comprised of two privileged humans. Moreover, Giovanni's current attire reassured Johan further. Although he wore a black suit, there was no sign of the signature red R emblem of Team Rocket. This meant Giovanni likely wouldn't be revealing his identity today. That was all Johan needed to know. Ahem. Midori cleared her throat softly before speaking. Giovanni-sama, Johan-sensei has arrived. Hearing this, Giovanni stood and looked over at Johan with a gentle smile. Forgive me for the informal welcome, Giovanni said, gesturing toward the cats as if to excuse the scene. Johan chuckled. I never expected Giovanni-sama to be such a gentle soul. Oh. Giovanni fed the last of the cat treats to Persian, then lightly patted its head, signaling for it and the Meowth to leave. Rising to his full height, he regarded Johan with amused interest. And what kind of person did you imagine me to be? Johan rubbed his chin, pretending to think. Strong. Confident. Midori nodded. Those were givens. Ambitious. Responsible. Midori's agreement deepened. Giovanni was responsible not only for Team Rocket but also for his Pokémon. However, Giovanni's smile remained unreadable, his eyes narrowing slightly as he listened. Then Johan added, family-oriented. Or rather, someone who values familial bonds. Midori blinked, startled. Family-oriented? Giovanni? Even Giovanni himself seemed taken aback, though he quickly recovered. His thoughts drifted to Johan's earlier question during their first conversation, about whether Giovanni had children. Johan continued, most of the time rational. Most of the time? Now Midori was completely lost. What kind of evaluation was this? Giovanni, however, maintained his enigmatic smile, asking, and the rest of the time? Johan shrugged casually. Emotional. A man who transformed the entirety of Team Rocket into a tool for finding his son. How could that not be emotional? The memory of Giovanni shielding Silver from a fiery collapse crossed Johan's mind, a testament to Giovanni's humanity as both a man and a father. Midori, watching the exchange, felt increasingly out of the loop. What were they even talking about? Anything else? Giovanni prompted, intrigued. Johan smiled. Possesses the air of a true master. Though it might sound like flattery, it wasn't untrue. Giovanni's prowess as a trainer was matched only by his willingness to pass on his knowledge, as evidenced by his book Secrets of the Earth, which greatly benefited Blue. Giovanni chuckled softly. So this is how Johan-sensei psychoanalyzes me? Johan nodded without hesitation. But after today, I'd add one more. Oh. You're a gentle uncle. Giovanni froze for a moment, then burst out laughing. It wasn't often he felt understood, but this young man before him seemed to get him in a way few ever did. Well then, Johan-sensei, Giovanni said, still smiling. Would you care to have a battle with this gentle uncle of yours? Johan froze, his smile stiffening. Battle? Against Giovanni? The battle will follow standard gym rules, Giovanni assured him. After all, isn't battle the best way for trainers and Pokémon to connect? Even Gengar popped out of Johan's shadow, its red eyes gleaming with excitement. Kaka! Uncle, are there prizes involved? Johan tried to shove Gengar back into the shadows, muttering under his breath. You don't even know who you're up against. Giovanni laughed heartily. Of course, there will be rewards. Seeing Gengar's enthusiasm, he added. Besides, your Pokémon seems eager to battle. Johan sighed in defeat. All right, he relented. As long as the outcome doesn't matter. It's just a friendly match, Giovanni confirmed, tossing a Pokeball in his hand. With both trainers taking their positions, Midori stepped up as referee, her heart racing with excitement. 2v2 standard battle format. The match ends when one side's Pokémon are unable to continue. The gym fell silent, and both trainers readied their Pokeballs. Begin! 2 trainers threw their Pokeballs simultaneously. Bang! From Giovanni's side emerged a burly Rhyhorn, its muscles rippling with raw power. Clearly, Giovanni wasn't pulling out his strongest Pokémon, but even this Rhyhorn radiated immense strength. Ooh! Johan's Ice Vulpix stepped forward, its tails fanning out elegantly, its eyes sharp and focused. This Rhyhorn is dangerous. Vulpix's determination was palpable. This time I'll give it everything I've got. Giovanni versus Johan. Battle start. The howling blizzard engulfed the battlefield, blanketing it in swirling snow. The once clear arena grew hazy as a thin layer of frost coated the ground. Giovanni narrowed his eyes, impressed. Such precise weather control, he silently praised. But this wouldn't hinder his strategy. Rhyhorn used takedown, Giovanni instructed, his hand lifting in a subtle motion. Arha! The Rhyhorn exhaled a cloud of hot steam rising from its rugged body as it adjusted to the frigid air. Then, with a forceful snort, it barreled forward, locking onto the Vulpix. Rock head ability? Johan speculated upon hearing Giovanni's command. When the Rhyhorn initiated its charge, the Pokémon's data appeared in Johan's mental catalog, confirming his guess. But when Johan glimpsed the extensive list of moves the Rhyhorn had mastered, he couldn't help but whistle in astonishment. Wow! Even knowing Rhyhorn could learn a diverse array of moves, finding someone who trained a Rhyhorn to Giovanni's level was rare. Though impressed, Johan's response was swift. Vulpix, baby doll eyes. Ooh! Amidst the falling snow, Vulpix's eyes glistened with a pitiful teary sheen as it stared pleadingly at the charging Rhyhorn. Arha! Even a battle-hardened Rhyhorn, conditioned under Giovanni's rigorous training, was caught off guard. Its heart skipped a beat. How adorable! Off to the side, acting as referee, Matori was already smitten, a blush rising to her cheeks. How could a Vulpix be this cute? My heart can't take it. Rhyhorn! Giovanni called sharply, his tone grounding the Pokémon. Even Giovanni had to admit that Johan's Vulpix was disarmingly cute. But in battle, appearances shouldn't sway a Pokémon's resolve. Snapping out of its trance, Rhyhorn growled and redoubled its charge. Though briefly distracted, the slight pause gave Johan and Vulpix valuable time. Light screen. Ooh! Vulpix's eyes flashed with psychic energy, summoning an invisible wall that materialized between it and the charging Rhyhorn. But, crack, the light screen shattered under Rhyhorn's powerful takedown. While it had slowed the attack, it couldn't stop it entirely. Bang! Rhyhorn felt the impact resonate through its body. But something was off. Did it just shatter the Vulpix? Rhyhorn blinked, confused as it surveyed its surroundings. Snowmen. The arena was suddenly filled with snowman replicas of Vulpix, scattered strategically across the battlefield. Building snowmen? Giovanni's lips curled into an amused smile. Even Giovanni had to acknowledge Johan's ingenuity in crafting battlefield strategies inspired by his Pokémon's unique talents. By capitalizing on Rhyhorn's hesitation from baby doll eyes and its pause from crashing through the light screen, Johan had given Vulpix enough time to create decoys. However, Earthquake, Giovanni commanded, his voice steady. Boom, boom, boom. Centered on Rhyhorn, a massive shockwave erupted, shaking the arena violently. Cracks spiderwebbed across the battlefield, and Vulpix's snowmen were obliterated in an instant. As expected of the Earth's Giovanni, a single earthquake from Rhyhorn reduced the terrain to rubble, even with its attack stat weakened by baby doll eyes. Ooh! Through the howling winds came a faint yelp of pain. Got you. Giovanni's eyes glinted. Stone Edge. Rhyhorn reared onto its hind legs before slamming its forelegs into the ground. Boom! The battlefield erupted with jagged stone pillars that surged toward Vulpix's location like a wave of spikes. Johan finally called out, Vulpix Blizzard. With the snowy weather enhancing its ice-type attacks, a powerful blizzard roared into existence, enshrouding Rhyhorn in a flurry of snow and ice. Frost clung to its rocky armor. "That's a strong blizzard," Matori exclaimed. Even though Rhyhorn wasn't one of Giovanni's main Pokémon, it had defended the gym against countless challengers, often taking down opponents with a single earthquake. But Johan's Vulpix had not only withstood Rhyhorn's attacks but managed to launch an effective counteroffensive. When was the last time a challenger pushed the Earth's Giovanni this far? Calculated gamble. Within the blizzard's howling winds, Vulpix seemed to fly out of the icy tempest, narrowly evading the oncoming stone edge. How did it dodge that? Even Giovanni was momentarily surprised. His sharp eyes caught a faint shimmer around Vulpix, an aura of psychic energy. Psychic energy? Was that future sight in action? Rhyhorn heavy slam, a break free. As Giovanni spoke, Rhyhorn's body glinted with metallic energy, shaking off the frost that had clung to its rocky exterior. Using heavy slam as both an attack and a defensive maneuver? Johan inwardly cursed. Giovanni's cheating. There was no way Rhyhorn should still be standing after eating a blizzard that strong. But Johan didn't relent. Vulpix, another blizzard. Ooh! As the blizzard surged once more, Giovanni's calm smile sent a shiver down Johan's spine. In the renewed storm, Rhyhorn finally collapsed with a heavy thud. A sneaky comeback. But before Vulpix could celebrate, a massive shadow loomed overhead, a boulder materializing in midair. Rockslide. The falling rocks smashed into the arena. Johan tensed. Vulpix. As the dust settled, Vulpix shook itself off, looking battered but still conscious. Blinked up at Johan, its wide eyes seeming to say, "That was close." Johan let out a relieved sigh, though his hand trembled slightly. This sneaky little fox, it kept one trick up its sleeve. The final showdown. Go, Gengar. Caw-caw. Gengar burst from Johan's shadow, tossing its sunglasses into its mouth and flashing its sharp teeth. Giovanni's second Pokeball opened, revealing a roaring Nidoking. And I do. Even Gengar hesitated for a split second. This isn't Nidoqueen. But Giovanni's Nidoking emanated a commanding presence, its battle-hardened body exuding immense pressure. With Gengar's levitate ability replaced by Cursed Body, it no longer had immunity to ground-type moves. Johan didn't need a Pokédex to know Nidoking was packing the Sheer Force ability, likely paired with a Life Orb. Gengar, that's the guy who bullied Nidoqueen. Johan lied with a straight face. Caw-caw. Gengar's eyes burned with rage. It dramatically pulled out a twisted tag from its mouth and licked it. This ends now. Tactical exchange. Earthquake. Giovanni's voice rang out. Gengar Will-O-Wisp. As Nidoking stomped the ground, the arena quaked violently. But Gengar leaped into the air on a trail of shadowy mist, hurling spectral blue flames at Nidoking. The Will-O-Wisp connected, burning Nidoking and having its physical attack. Giovanni nodded in acknowledgement. A well-timed move. But Nidoking wasn't just a physical powerhouse. Earth power. With a low growl, Nidoking formed an orb of golden energy, its sheer speed leaving Johan no time to counter. Shadow Ball. Gengar smirked, forming its own sphere of dark energy. Two attacks collided midair with a deafening explosion, sending shockwaves through the arena. Gengar skill swap. A sudden pulse of energy surrounded both Pokémon. Gengar swapped its Cursed Body for Nidoking's Sheer Force. The next Shadow Ball exploded with amplified power, striking Nidoking hard. Even Giovanni smiled. He predicted Nidoking's ability clever. The last exchange. But Giovanni wasn't done. Shadow Ball. Giovanni ordered. Nidoking summoned one final orb of dark energy, but instead of aiming at Gengar, it hurled it at the ground. Boom! The explosion scattered debris, ricocheting a chunk of rock into Gengar. Caw-caw! Jengar staggered but stayed upright long enough to see Nidoking collapse. Jengar is unable to battle, Midori announced. Both trainers have no usable Pokémon left. Johan's Vulpix technically had some strength remaining, giving him the win by default. Tori's eyes widened. Johan-sensei just won? Defeating Giovanni? That must be the highlight of one's life, right? But honestly, that shadow ball curving mid-flight was kind of cheating. If not for that sneaky maneuver, Jengar might have escaped unscathed. It was also a testament to Giovanni's true strategic brilliance, which could only shine in unrestricted battles. Imagine if that curveball shadow ball had been aimed at me instead of Jengar. Johan shook his head, dispelling the thought. He wasn't arrogant enough to get cocky over one victory, especially when Giovanni had been holding back. One revival herb enough? Or should I grab 2 more? Johan glanced at his Vulpix and Jengar with a smile. Jengar blinked, its mischievous grin widening. Kaka, what's with the generosity today? Uwu. Vulpix's eyes sparkled, tail wagging eagerly. 10, please. Johan glared, exasperation on his face. You only need a few sprays of potion. What do you need 10 revival herbs for? But seeing Vulpix's hopeful gaze, Johan sighed. Fine. I can always buy more. Better safe than sorry. It wasn't worth risking long-term damage for his Pokémon. Jengar's eyes glinted slyly as an idea flashed through its mind. With a sudden flip, it bounced up, sprinting toward Giovanni. The mischievous ghost opened its mouth and rummaged in its dimensional pocket, pulling out a wikiberry and handing it over. Giovanni raised an eyebrow, surprised. For me. Kaka. Jengar chuckled nervously, scratching its head. Just a misunderstanding. I just realized your Nidoking wasn't the one bullying Nidoqueen. So maybe I went a little hard. Nidoking, PQ. Giovanni chuckled softly, patting Jengar's head. Thank you. Nidoking appreciates the gesture. Jengar stood tall, hands on its hips. Kaka, don't mention it, big guy. Giovanni's smile deepened. After a moment of thought, he reached into his pocket and pulled out several small, irregularly shaped dark stone fragments. Consider this a return gift. Dark stone fragments? Jengar's eyes lit up, its mouth practically watering. Without hesitation, it extended its tongue, wrapped up the stones, and swallowed them whole before scampering back to Johan. Giovanni shook his head, amused. Watching Jengar return, Johan massaged his temples, exasperated. Unbelievable. His Jengar had just traded a single wikiberry for several valuable dark stone fragments. And the worst part? Giovanni clearly knew he was being scammed but had still gone along with it. Midori soon returned, holding a small box in her hands. She approached Johan with a mix of awe and respect. Johan-sensei, this is the Earth Badge of Viridian Gym. Along with it, please accept this TM. The green Earth Badge gleamed in the light, symbolizing the Viridian Gym. And the TM? It was for Earthquake. Johan raised an eyebrow. Admittedly, none of his current Pokémon could learn Earthquake, though it might become useful once his Dratini evolved into a Dragonite. Still, the TM itself was priceless, especially as it came with Giovanni's personal insights. Of course, those insights would require materials to fully utilize, likely a costly investment. Johan smiled wryly. Painful yet rewarding expense. As he pocketed the badge, Midori's gaze lingered on him, her expression tinged with admiration. No wonder the boss values him so highly. Not only is he a gifted psychologist for Pokémon, but his battling skills are just as impressive. An unexpected proposal. After tidying up the battlefield and recalling his Pokémon, Giovanni stood, turning to Johan. Johan-sensei, shall we talk? Johan tensed slightly, recognizing that the real reason for this meeting was about to be revealed. All right. In a quiet office within the Viridian Gym, Midori delivered tea and snacks before discreetly leaving only Johan and Giovanni. Johan glanced at Giovanni, who wore a calm yet unreadable expression. If he brings up Team Rocket, I'll just play dumb, Johan resolved. Giovanni sipped his tea and picked up an adorably decorated Jigglypuff cookie. Honestly, seeing the leader of Team Rocket nibbling on a Jigglypuff-shaped cookie was oddly amusing. This was made by Metori, Giovanni remarked. You should try it, Johan-sensei. Without hesitation, Johan grabbed a handful of cookies. He popped one into his mouth, tossed another into his shadow for Jengar, and even fed one to the dozing Vulpix in his arms. They're good, Johan admitted between bites. Giovanni placed his teacup down, his tone casual yet serious. Johan-sensei, have you considered staying here at the Viridian Gym? Johan blinked, caught off guard. You could start as an acting gym leader. But if you find it suits you, I wouldn't mind passing the gym to you entirely in the future. What? A gym? Just like that? Sure, running a gym came with its challenges, but the financial benefits alone would be staggering. Even in a mid-sized city like Viridian, the income from a gym was nothing to scoff at. But this was Viridian Gym. Johan hesitated, weighing his options before offering a polite yet firm response. While I appreciate the generous offer, I'm afraid I have to decline. Teaching and guiding students is my true passion. Giovanni's eyes briefly flickered with surprise. For someone who seemed to value money as much as Johan did, rejecting the chance to run a gym was unexpected. After a moment, Giovanni smiled. Johan-sensei, your dedication to teaching is admirable. A beat of silence passed before Giovanni changed the topic. Johan-sensei, are you familiar with Team Rocket? Here it comes. Johan's grip on his teacup tightened slightly but quickly relaxed. Well, as you know, I'm from Hoenn. But you studied at the academy in Johto, didn't you? Giovanni countered, his tone light yet pointed. So no escape then. I've heard of them. And what's your impression of Team Rocket? Giovanni's smile was disarmingly pleasant. Johan exhaled slowly, choosing his words carefully. A criminal organization. Giovanni's expression didn't change, but his eyes gleamed with faint amusement. Go on. A highly ambitious and well-organized one. Giovanni raised an eyebrow. What makes you say that? Johan elaborated. Despite their criminal activities, Team Rocket operates under a clear code of conduct. They're disciplined and have a reputation for rewarding loyalty with fair compensation. Even Giovanni's famed Meowth had mentioned Team Rocket's benefits, signing bonuses, annual gatherings, and incentives rivaling even those of the Pokémon League. A disciplined, ambitious organization with a vision to rival the league itself, Johan concluded. Giovanni was silent for a long moment, his smile fading slightly. And their future? None, Johan replied bluntly. Giovanni's voice turned cold. Oh. Unperturbed, Johan explained. Team Rocket's activities, poaching and smuggling, leave a stain that can't be erased. As long as they remain in the shadows, they'll always risk being exposed by the light. Giovanni's expression darkened. Then they're doomed? Not necessarily. Johan smiled faintly, leaning forward. Why not bring Team Rocket into the light? Giovanni's eyes widened, intrigued. Turn them into a public-facing organization. Embrace legality, shed the parts that repel society, like poaching, and take control of the darker undercurrents that the League cannot touch. Johan continued. Team Rocket already handles operations the League can't or won't. Why not rebrand? Become a massive corporation with transparency, better benefits, and accessible opportunities. Giovanni smirked. And the inevitable internal resistance? Johan met his gaze directly. Break it to rebuild it, he said. If you can't break it yourself, create someone who can. Giovanni's smile slowly returned, though his eyes shimmered with new thoughts. Create someone, he murmured. Johan caught himself, suddenly realizing. Wait, could he be thinking of Red? After some contemplation, Giovanni chuckled. We've wandered off topic, he said. I actually asked you here for a favor. A favor? Giovanni's tone softened. You may have heard. I have a son. He's been missing for years, and I've searched tirelessly without success. Johan-sensei, with your connections to students and children, perhaps you could help me find him. Johan's face grew serious. A father's plea to find his child? I can't refuse that. Even if the chances are slim, I'll do everything in my power. Giovanni gazed at him intently. No, you'll find him. I believe in you. As Johan left in a car, Giovanni and Midori watched from the Viridian Gym's entrance. Boss. Midori hesitated. Do you think he knows about Team Rocket? Giovanni chuckled, his expression unreadable. Does it matter, Midori? Midori blinked in confusion. Sometimes an outsider sees more clearly than those within. Perhaps what Team Rocket needs most is a bystander. Let's just let this matter go, all right? Inside the car arranged by Midori, Johan wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. Truth be told, chatting with Giovanni was no small feat. Even with Giovanni's friendliness, knowing his identity as the leader of Team Rocket made it impossible to treat him like a regular gym leader. I wonder if Giovanni actually took my advice to heart. Johan wasn't sure if Giovanni was swayed. After all, this was Team Rocket at its strongest, dominating 2 regions, infiltrating the Pokémon League deeply, and successfully creating Mewtwo. Other groups like Team Magma, Team Aqua, Team Galactic, or Team Plasma sought the power of legendary Pokémon. But Team Rocket? They created one. And they succeeded. With such strength, did Giovanni even need Johan's advice? Never mind. He resolved to leave Team Rocket's future to figures like Red and Lance. Maybe Silver's return might even change Giovanni. Come to think of it, in the Pokémon Adventures manga, Silver was abducted at age 2 by the masked man who was actually Price. Alongside him, other children like Blue, Wally, Karen, and Will were also taken. But didn't Karen mention once that she and Lorelei were classmates? Johan recalled Lorelei's brief comment. So, the timelines are a mess, and I can't tell which part is from Adventures, the anime, or the games. But what if the masked man didn't exist in this world? Then who had abducted Silver? That's a question only Finding Silver can answer. For now, it was enough that there was no Price-like figure here. The masked man's power was absurd, his Pokémon lineup terrifying, be it the Delibird, a Swinub that refused to evolve, or the legendary Ho-Oh he had captured. Shrugging off these thoughts, Johan turned his attention to the small metallic case in his hand, a gift Giovanni had handed him before he left. This was what Giovanni had promised when Jengar jokingly asked about rewards before the battle. A piece of metal coat, useful for evolving Onyx into Steelix or Scyther into Sizer. While the Earthquake TM was a great prize, this metal coat was of greater immediate value to Johan. He could already imagine Tinkatuff's excitement upon seeing it. This particular metal coat wasn't naturally occurring but artificially compressed, rich in high-grade steel-type minerals. It was rare and highly valuable, likely worth upwards of 5 million Poke Dollars. This is the kind of benefit Team Rocket offers. No wonder so many people were devoted to them. Car traveled steadily through Viridian Forest. Midori had offered to arrange a helicopter, but Johan thought it too ostentatious and opted for a car ride instead. Finally, they arrived at Pallet Town. The small, peaceful village brimmed with bluery, quiet roads and sparkling rivers where Magikarp and Poliwag frolicked. Stepping out of the car, Johan breathed in the fresh air, feeling a surge of energy. By the roadside, a few children were having what could generously be called a Pokémon battle. Their high-pitched voices might have left one questioning how their Pokémon even understood them. But Johan didn't underestimate them. This was Pallet Town. Who knew which of these kids might grow into a legendary Super Pallet Trainer, a league champion, or even the famed 5-minute champion? What if he bumped into young Red? Should he teach him or prank him? And if it were young Ash? Perhaps he'd prepare him for the harsh realities of the world before his inevitable misadventures. Letting his Pokémon out of their balls, Gengar, Vulpix, Tinkatuff, and Dratini, Johan watched as, apart from Gengar, the others fit seamlessly into the playful atmosphere with the children's Pokémon. Could it be? I have potential to be a Pallet Town local too. With a chuckle, he turned his sights to Professor Oak's laboratory, a prominent building with a windmill atop a hill. As he climbed the path to the lab, Gengar's antics began as expected. "Caw-caw," it shouted, startling a flock of Pidgey into flight. "You do realize some strong Pokémon live here, right?" Johan warned. Gengar waved dismissively. "How strong could they be?" "Retired champions Pokémon," Johan quipped. Gengar froze. "Caw-caw." It immediately fell in line, climbing the steps quietly. Johan disciplined. Dratini, as always, tripped over itself trying to ascend the steps, but Johan was used to it. The day came when Dratini's clumsiness vanished. It would likely signal some great cosmic imbalance. His real concern lay with Tinkatuff, hammer in hand, eagerly scanning the surroundings for metal. Let's hope Professor Oak doesn't have too many steel types lying around. When they reached the lab, Johan knocked on the door. A familiar face opened it. "Blue," Johan greeted with a smile. "It's been a while." Blue froze for a moment. "Long time no see." "Johan, sir." Since Johan had saved him during the spear pillar incident, Blue had researched him thoroughly and learned about his reputation as the cunning one. Hence, even the proud Blue now regarded him with a healthy dose of wariness. "I'm here on Professor Birch's request to meet Professor Oak," Johan explained. "My grandfather is in the backyard observing Pokémon. Please follow me." Blue led Johan past bustling researchers in the chaotic lab, through a side door and into... Johan's jaw dropped. A vast expanse of plains, rolling hills, and shimmering lakes stretched out before him. "Johan?" This was the backyard. Blue scratched his head. "There's no helping it. This place houses over 3,000 Pokémon, not counting the wild ones or the ones my grandfather raises himself." 3,000? Johan nodded mechanically. No wonder Blue was later dubbed the Breeder, with unparalleled expertise in raising Pokémon. Raising the Pokémon in this backyard alone was an impossible task for most. Grandfather is probably near the Kangaskhan. It's not far, so no need for the jeep. Johan glanced at the row of jeeps parked nearby, his eye twitching. A backyard that required jeeps. Wonderful. Following Blue on foot, Johan soon saw a white-coated elderly man crouched on the ground, magnifying glass in hand, observing a feeding Kangaskhan. "Looks like the little one's teething." "No wonder it's weaning," Professor Oak muttered as he lifted the baby Kangaskhan from its mother's pouch. But before he could examine further, "Gar!" Kangaskhan roared, snatched her baby back, and swatted Oak aside with her tail. Soared through the air in a graceful arc before crashing into the grass. Johan, Blue, unfazed, continued forward. Clearly, he'd seen this routine far too many times. "Grandpa!" Blue called out. "Johan is here." Looked up, spotting Johan, and his eyes lit up. "Ah, Johan! Birch mentioned you were coming. Thanks for going out of your way." The two had met during the Empty Cornet Pokémon Researcher Summit, so they weren't strangers. "It's no trouble," Johan replied with a smile. He turned to his shadow and called, "Gengar." The shadow remained still. Overhead, a few Murkrow cawed ominously. "Caw, caw." "Oak and Blue, question mark." Sweat formed on Johan's brow. Where had Gengar gone? This backyard housed over 3,000 Pokémon. Suddenly, Gengar emerged from Oak's shadow, pulling a spooky face at the professor. "Caw-caw." Johan exhaled in relief. Thankfully. But Oak's expression turned complicated. In Gengar's confused gaze, the professor gently patted its head. "Thank you, Gengar," Oak said softly. "Caw-caw." Jengar tilted its head, utterly baffled. Thank me? For what? And why didn't my scare work? Even Blue seemed puzzled by Oak's reaction. But Johan had a faint understanding. Oak's words weren't meant for Jengar, but for someone it reminded him of. Jengar sidled up to Johan, pointing at its head. Kaka, is this old guy okay in the head? All done. Professor Oak, in an uncharacteristically pensive mood, finished uploading the data on the massive Dragonite from Johan's Pokédex into his computer. He tilted his head, gazing out the window at a 45-degree angle, his eyes brimming with nostalgia, regret, and sorrow. Kaka! Jengar stood nearby, pressing its fingers together in a gesture of apology. It genuinely believed that its fearsome technique had been too effective, scaring the old professor into a depressive state. However, Blue was equally puzzled. What's going on with Grandpa? He turned to Johan for answers, as the latter was the only one who seemed unfazed. Sighing softly, Johan patted Blue on the shoulder. That's an old story. Better for kids like you not to ask. Someday, when Blue inevitably crossed paths with Agatha and got inexplicably walloped by her, he'd probably understand. Blue nodded hesitantly, unsure if he truly understood. Wait. But, Johan, sir, aren't you a generation younger than my grandfather? For some time, Professor Oak seemed to shake off his melancholy. He slapped his cheeks lightly and took a deep breath. Oh ho ho! A Dragonite of such enormous size, truly a rare sight. Johan and Blue exchanged a glance. He's back? It was your Jengar that captured the footage, wasn't it? Splendid work. Professor Oak's kindly smile returned as he patted Jengar on the head. Johan and Blue instinctively took a step back. Well, he's back, but not completely. Kaka. Even Jengar, usually fearless, floated to Johan's side, hiding behind him. This old man is giving me weird vibes like he's sizing me up. Johan twitched slightly at the corners of his mouth. Fine, hide if you want, he said. Jengar nodded vigorously and sank into Johan's shadow. Once Jengar was gone, Professor Oak slowly regained his composure, focusing his attention back on the research material. Do you think the massive Dragonite could be connected to the Dynamax phenomenon in Galar? Finally, back to normal. Johan and Blue both let out a sigh of relief. Hearing the mention of Dynamax, Johan's eyes flashed with thought. Indeed, there might be a connection between the giant Dragonite and Galar's Dynamax energy. In theory, Dynamax was limited to the Galar region due to Eternatus' energy field. But as with most things, there could be exceptions. Who knew if, thousands of years ago, some stray fragment of Eternatus' power had leaked beyond Galar? Johan shook his head, amused at the thought. Dynamax being exclusive to Galar was just a temporary notion anyway. Someday there might well be an energy transmission device to spread Dynamax globally. After all, when Mega Evolution was first discovered, Professor Sycamore also said it could only occur in Kalos. And once, Professor Oak himself claimed there were only 151 Pokémon. How many were there now? By Johan's count, more than 1,000. As fascinating as the origins of the giant Dragonite were, Johan found himself more intrigued by the idea of seeing Mega Evolution versus Dynamax versus Terrestrialization in action. Now that would be a sight. Am I forgetting something? Hello? Magnolia, it's me, Oak. I've just sent you some data on a massive Dragonite. Let me know if it's of any help. While Johan's thoughts wandered, Professor Oak was already on the phone with Professor Magnolia, Galar's leading authority on Dynamax and one of the developers of the Dynamax band. Boom! A sudden explosion echoed through the backyard. Startled, the lab researchers paused, but after a brief moment of surprise, they returned to work with practiced indifference. Ah, it's that time again. Those troublemakers just can't stay put. I wonder how long it'll take them to adapt. Muttering complaints, the researchers resumed their tasks. Magnolia, something's come up on my end. We'll talk later. Quickly hung up, dashing toward the backyard. Blue, unfazed, followed at a relaxed pace. Clearly, this was routine. Johan, curious, trailed after them. In the backyard, a crowd of Pokémon had gathered, radiating hostility. Surrounded by their accusatory stares were 3 Kabutops, their triangular heads gleaming under the sunlight and scythe-like arms raised in a defensive posture. Kabutops. Ancient Pokémon with the dual rock/water typing, Kabutops were thought to have gone extinct, existing now only through fossil revival. Johan, sir, you recognize them? Blue asked in surprise. After all, Kabutops were incredibly rare, and most people never encountered one in their lives. What are they? Johan trailed off, narrowing his eyes at the scene. Kabutops stood back to back, emanating a low, guttural hum. Hunting, Johan guessed. In ancient times, Kabutops were apex predators. Their fierce disposition was legendary. Blue sighed. Reviving them wasn't easy, but clearly they're struggling to adapt to the modern environment. Situations like this happen often. Roar! A massive Ursaring, its eyes tinged red with rage, bellowed and charged forward. Kabu! Kabookaboo! Kabutops responded with sharp cries, their voices resonating like some ancient chant. Wait, Johan's expression grew peculiar. Kaka! Jengar peeked out of Johan's shadow, curious. Based on Jengar's translation, the Kabutops and Ursaring's argument went something like this. Ursaring, I was just washing my feet by the lake. Kabutops, where's the ocean? Ursaring, are you trying to steal my honey? Kabutops, we just want directions. Ursaring, Kabutops. Listening to the nonsensical exchange, Johan's suspicions solidified. These 2 sides didn't even understand each other. Revived ancient Pokémon didn't share a common language with modern Pokémon. Was this some kind of Pokémon version of the duel at the Forbidden City? Except instead of a duel, it was a brawl. The Kabutops, however, didn't seem intimidated. If anything, they looked thrilled. Haha, friends, why don't we all just calm down? Professor Oak waded into the crowd with a cheerful laugh. Without Ash's Bulbasaur to mediate things, this place is bound to be chaotic. Johan thought wryly. Roar! The enraged Ursaring snarled at Oak, swinging its massive paw at him. Whack! Once again, Professor Oak was sent flying in a graceful arc. Johan? Seriously, doesn't this man have Pokémon of his own? Kaboo! A Kabutop's blade-like arm began glowing with a torrent of water energy. Roar! The Ursaring opened its maw, energy gathering rapidly within. Blue's face paled. This is bad. Johan gave him a side eye. Your reactions are always a beat too late, aren't they? Whoosh! Delicate snowflakes began to fall, drifting lazily from the sky. Snow? The gathered Pokémon froze in confusion. Goo-woot! A lilting, ethereal hum resonated through the air. Gentle yet commanding, it softened the hostility in an instant. Caw-caw! To some Pokémon, however, the sound became a bone-chilling laugh, the ominous cackle of Jengar. The ringleaders, the Ursaring and Kabutops, trembled visibly. Yet, to the Kabutop's surprise, they could understand Jengar's speech. Cradling Vulpix in his arms, Johan strolled leisurely into the crowd. His warm smile and quiet words seemed to diffuse the tension as Vulpix, its eyes glowing faintly with psychic energy, shaped the falling snowflakes into intricate, soothing patterns. One by one, the Pokémon fell into a peaceful slumber. The first toppled over, followed by another and another, like dominoes, until all were fast asleep. Blue helped Oak to his feet, his eyes wide with disbelief at the scene. Oak's gaze was deep as he observed Johan and his Pokémon. The humming Vulpix, the mischievous Jengar, the vigilant Tinkatuff with its hammer, the curious Dratini. He chuckled softly. What incredible synergy! Did you see it, Blue? Ha! Blue blinked in confusion. Someday he'd understand. Continued, he instinctively read each Pokémon's likes, fears, and emotions. His coordination with his own team is flawless. Blue finally noticed that the sleeping Pokémon wore expressions of contentment, except of course for the troublemakers. His heart pounded with awe. How was this possible? Oak, sensing his thoughts, smiled and said softly, "That, my boy, is the work of a mind whisperer." Finally home. Johan pushed open the door and took a deep breath, savoring the familiar atmosphere of his small, cozy home. Cough, cough. Even though he'd only been gone for about a week, a thin layer of dust had already settled over everything. Dry eye. Dratini cautiously slithered inside, its large, curious eyes surveying the warm and snug interior. Gengar, ever the self-proclaimed big brother, patted Dratini reassuringly on the back, baring its teeth in a cheerful grin. "Caw-caw. Don't worry, kiddo. Big bro's got you covered." "All right, no need for words, let's clean up first." Johan issued the mission with practiced authority. He'd been away for nearly a week and had experienced quite a bit during that time. Helping Lance restore the Red Gyarados, battling at the Mauville, Saffron, and even Viridian gyms, meeting Sabrina, Giovanni, Professor Birch, Professor Oak, and Green, it had been a whirlwind of activity. More importantly, though, he'd captured Dratini and evolved Ghastly into Gengar. He'd also collected several valuable items, a giant dragon scale, a metal coat, a dragon fong, and even some technical machines. Originally, Professor Oak had invited Johan to stay a couple more days to discuss research findings in greater depth. But both Johan and Gengar had refused. For Johan, there were lectures to prepare for tomorrow. As for Gengar, well, it found Professor Oak's peculiar friendliness unsettling. Felt like the professor might be eyeing it for some mysterious purpose. And Johan's refusal? Definitely not because he was worried Oak might tempt him with one of the starter Pokémon, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, or Charmander. Even though these iconic choices held a certain allure for any Pokémon lover, Johan's current finances were better suited to ensuring he and his Pokémon didn't starve. Absolutely not because he feared being burdened with a special Pokédex, loaded with tasks and responsibilities. After all, who typically received those special Pokédexes? Red, Green, Ethan, Silver, all protagonists. And what did they face? Freezing, fires, and relentless attacks from sinister organizations. Not to mention the real problem, being targeted by legendary Pokémon. Super Mewtwo was already more than enough trouble for Johan. The only thing he regretted was missing the chance to meet Red or Ash, or perhaps even both. But with their abilities, he was certain they'd cross paths someday. Hopefully much later. Home is safe. As Gengar and Alolan Vulpix introduced Dratini to its new surroundings, Johan entered the bathroom and emerged with a mop, bucket, and cleaning cloths. Gengar, you're on ceiling, walls, and all the nooks and crannies. Vulpix, handle the bed, tables, and surfaces. Tinkatuff, the floors are yours. The three Pokémon saluted with enthusiasm. After all, they'd done this many times before and were quite accustomed to the process. Dry eye. Dratini blinked curiously at Johan, clearly waiting for its task. After a moment of thought, Johan assigned the bathroom to Dratini. "You'll be in charge of cleaning the bathroom with water," he said. It was only fitting since Dratini was the only one capable of using water. "Just remember, whatever you do, don't use water gun." Dry eye. Thrilled to be entrusted with a job, Dratini chirped happily and slithered off with a cloth in its mouth. Johan, meanwhile, took charge of the kitchen, a crucial area that demanded his personal attention. Thus began the grand Johan's house cleanup mission in earnest. Gengar floated up to the ceiling, a cloth in hand. It huffed lightly at a light fixture, then wiped it meticulously until it squeaked. "Gengar, use water, not saliva." "That's the fifth lampshade you've ruined." Johan's voice rang out from the kitchen. "Caw-caw." I know," Gengar shouted back indignantly. It wasn't saliva this time, just a little breath. As it inspected the light fixture, Gengar froze, realizing the lampshade was thinning before its eyes. Caw. This should be fine, probably. Vulpix, stop burrowing into the blankets. You'll complain about being cold tonight if they're dirty. Woo. Woo. Poking its head out from the cozy folds, Alolan Vulpix gave an innocent look, then took a deep breath, savoring the scent. Oh woo. But Johan's scent is so comforting. Tinkatuff, remember, you're holding a mop, not your hammer. Be gentle. Unconvinced, Johan left the kitchen to check. Sure enough. Snap. A very serious-looking Tinkatuff stood clutching a mop handle snapped clean in two, contemplating how to repair it. Johan groaned, pressing a hand to his forehead. I should have remembered you've all gotten stronger after our travels. Caw-caw. Ooh-woo. Dry-yi. Trio chimed in unison, their faces lighting up with smiles. Don't worry, we forgive you. Johan. He was used to this. Wait, where's Dratini? Johan suddenly realized the bathroom had been eerily quiet. A foreboding sense of dread crept over him. What if, opening the door revealed a bathroom transformed into a watery mess? Steeling himself, Johan cautiously approached. With a deep breath, he opened the door. Thankfully, there was no flood. Dratini had indeed refrained from using water gun. But Johan's eye twitched at the sight. The bathroom was crammed with soap suds. Bubbles filled every inch of the room, forming a frothy fortress. Amid the foam, a familiar thud sounded. Dratini poked its head out of the bubbles, its face beaming with a silly, bubbly grin. Dry-yi. Johan let out a dry laugh. Eventually, the cleanup concluded. Sitting on the couch with a steaming cup of tea, Johan exhaled in relief. Finally done. While there were plenty of minor hiccups, the process went smoothly overall. At least compared to the first time he'd cleaned with his Pokémon when they'd caused a blackout, frozen the house, and shattered the tiles. Things had improved considerably. With everyone's cooperation, the house was spotless, and most importantly, still intact. But as he surveyed his cozy home, Johan couldn't help but realize something. This place might be getting a bit small. It was charmingly snug, sure, but Jengar's newly evolved bulk was clearly a tight fit. Jengar, now a certified pudgy powerhouse, struggled to maneuver in the cramped space. For now, they could manage. But if Vulpix and Dratini evolved, the house would definitely feel crowded. Maybe it's time to consider moving. The idea of leaving his current home made Johan feel wistful. But for the sake of his Pokémon's growth and comfort, it was something he'd have to seriously consider. Ideally, he thought, a place with an attached storefront would be perfect. Cafe or a Pokémon psychology clinic could bring in some extra income. While Johan mulled over his options, his Pokémon kept themselves busy. Jengar floated in midair, gnawing on the dark stone shards Giovanni had given it, while a pink incense burner released faint wisps of smoke nearby. Tinkatuff, thrilled with its new metal coat, was hammering away on the balcony. With its upgraded hammer, it was likely even stronger now. As for Vulpix, it was sprawled on the bed, diligently studying a technical machine to learn pain split. Occasionally, it let out thoughtful little hums as it nodded in understanding. And Dratini? Its biggest challenge at the moment was figuring out how to consume the massive Dragonite scale they'd acquired. Despite breaking the scale into smaller pieces, it remained a daunting task for Dratini's delicate teeth. The solution? Take it slow and steady. Ding ding! Johan's phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. The message was from the Academy's Dean of Academics, asking if he'd returned. Principal had brought the rewards for passing the Instructor certification exam and wanted Johan to pick them up tomorrow. Wednesday, clear skies. Vulpix lazily crawled over Johan's head, playfully brushing its 6 tails across his face before burrowing into the blanket on the other side. In his dreams, Johan saw a Gigantamax Jengar trampling over his face, and Dratini suddenly evolved into Dragonite, giving him an enormous hug. He woke up in a panic. Johan blinked, surveying his surroundings. Jengar had one foot hooked on the chandelier, drooling in its sleep, looking ready to fall at any moment. The blanket, courtesy of Vulpix, was frozen solid, making it colder than the outdoors. Tinkatuff sprawled in a starfish position, occupying most of the bed. Thankfully, its kicking hadn't yet reached Johan. And Dratini! Dratini! Johan exclaimed in alarm. Dratini's head was somehow stuck under the bed frame, its tail flailing helplessly. Johan's shout startled all the Pokémon awake. Gengar dropped to the floor with a dull thud, rubbing its head and yawning loudly. Vulpix arched its back and stretched luxuriously, its 6 tails spreading out elegantly. Tinkatuff sat up straight, looking disgruntled as if it hadn't gotten enough sleep. Johan rubbed his temples. Coming home only to have nightmares feels like a bad omen. As for the morning chaos, he had grown accustomed to it. He crouched down and pulled Dratini out from under the bed. How did you even get stuck under there? Dry-eye. Dratini squirmed, looking uncomfortable. Johan quickly pieced it together. About to shed, huh? Couldn't find the right spot for it? Dry-eye, Dratini nodded eagerly. Johan patted its head. Don't worry, I planned for this. I ordered something last night, it should be here soon. Hearing this, Dratini's eyes sparkled. Johan turned to Gengar, cupped its plump cheeks and squished them together. All right, out with it, why were you still sleeping so late? What were you up to last night? Gengar blinked rapidly, jolted fully awake. Caca. Nothing. I didn't do anything. Really? Johan narrowed his eyes suspiciously. He glanced over at the other Pokémon. Vulpix dove back under the blanket, leaving its little tail poking out. Tinkatuff grabbed its hammer, pretending to inspect it for imaginary imperfections. Johan's lips twitched. Only Dratini stared back at him innocently, blinking cluelessly. He sighed in relief. All right, everyone, go brush your teeth. Gengar jumped to attention, leading the others enthusiastically to the bathroom. On the way out of Johan's line of sight, Dratini and Gengar exchanged a conspiratorial glance, and Gengar gave a thumbs up. Gengar, why are you brushing your teeth out here? Carrying breakfast out of the kitchen, Johan saw Gengar fiddling with its toothbrush and cup outside the bathroom, looking exasperated. Caca! Gengar gestured irritably toward the bathroom. Inside, Vulpix, Tinkatuff, and Dratini had taken over, leaving no room for it. Johan chuckled wryly. Looks like it's time to seriously consider moving to a bigger place. Knock knock. The sound came from the door. Caca! Gengar perked up instantly, tossing aside its toothbrush and rushing to open the door. Standing there was a Mach-Amp deliveryman carrying a large package. Package contained a sizable potted plant. Inside the pot was a large rock covered in damp moss, supporting a well-grown fruit tree that had yet to bear fruit. According to Lance's Dragon Mastery Manual, Dratini thrived in deep water environments and was rarely seen in the wild. The legend that spotting a Dratini brought good luck stemmed from its rarity. A quality water source supported Dratini's growth and molting process. Lance had suggested building a large water tank, but Johan couldn't afford that. Instead, he settled for this potted setup, with its damp moss and sturdy stone, perfect for helping Dratini shed its skin. Dry-eye. Dratini poked its head out of the bathroom and, upon seeing the plant, its eyes lit up with excitement. It immediately slithered over to begin its shedding process. Looks like you like it, Johan said with a satisfied smile. With Dratini settled, Johan clapped his hands. All right, breakfast is ready. Finish brushing and come eat. On his way to the academy, Johan deliberately took the main road, checking out the surrounding areas for potential new housing. Finding a good place wasn't something that could be rushed, but Johan wanted to plan ahead, considering the future growth of his Pokémon and the possibility of adding new team members. At Rustboro Pokémon Academy's administration building, Johan arrived at the principal's office on the top floor, where he was greeted by the academic director, Martin. Mr. Johan, Martin said warmly, the principal is expecting you. Johan nodded, feeling slightly nervous. It was his first time meeting the enigmatic principal. Knock knock. Principal, Mr. Johan is here, Martin called out. Crash. Bang bang. Sounds of a scuffle came from inside. Caw-caw. Jengar peeked out of Johan's shadow, its curiosity piqued. Come in, a voice finally called out. The door creaked open and Johan stepped inside, only to freeze in disbelief. Inside, an elderly man in a green suit with a wiry frame and graying hair and beard was being pinned against the wall by a pangoro gripping him by the collar. Johan, what kind of introduction was this? The elderly principal, his face red from the pressure, weakly gestured for Pangoro to let go. Pangoro snorted, dropping him unceremoniously to the floor before giving the newcomers a disdainful glance and chewing on its bamboo stalk. Well then, I'll leave you to it, Martin muttered, hastily retreating. Caw-caw. Jengar, unfazed, was now eyeing the bamboo in Pangoro's mouth with great interest. Ah, no need to worry, Mr. Johan, the principal wheezed as he straightened up, still rubbing his neck. I was just sparring with Pangoro to keep my old bones moving. Johan had no idea how to respond. Fortunately, the principal quickly got to the point. I'm very impressed by your performance in the instructor exam. Your battle strategy is extraordinary, better than I could ever dream of. As a reward, Principal, this isn't going to be a Pokémon, is it? Johan interrupted hesitantly. He didn't dislike the idea of a new Pokémon, but raising one properly would strain his limited resources. Principal seemed surprised, but then chuckled. Not this time. But in the future, our Academy's breeding center will be introducing new Pokémon for selection. When the time comes, you might just meet your destined partner. Johan sighed inwardly. No escape, huh? For now, the principal continued, you'll receive one of 3 exclusive TM sets, Swords Dance, Hyper Beam, or Giga Impact. Each comes with premium materials for training. Johan's eyes widened. These were rare, highly sought-after moves. Without hesitation, he chose Swords Dance. While the raw power of Hyper Beam and Giga Impact was undeniable, the versatility of Swords Dance suited his team far better. Excellent choice, the principal said approvingly, handing over the TM and the accompanying materials, items like Scizor Claws, Zangoose Talons, and Garchomp Scales worth an astronomical sum. But just as Johan was about to express his gratitude, the principal dropped another bombshell. Oh, one more thing. Rustboro University is sending some instructors and students for an exchange. I'd like you to host them. Me? Johan blinked, caught off guard. The principal clapped a hand on his shoulder with a knowing smile. It'll be a great opportunity to learn from each other. I'm also planning for you to lead a team to another academy for inter-regional exchanges soon. Johan, so the 2 rewards come with strings attached. Fine, he muttered, resigned. But I'll need students to assist. No problem, the principal declared grandly. Johan left the office, clutching the TM, wondering what exactly he'd gotten himself into. What a delightful group of students. Johan scanned the classroom, his gaze landing on students who had managed to stay wide-eyed and attentive through an admittedly tedious Pokémon psychology lecture. A satisfied smile spread across his face. Compared to dealing with the various bigwigs outside the school, working with students was much more agreeable. Don't you think so, Jengar? Caw-caw. Jengar laughed heartily, flashing its signature toothy grin. As Johan and Jengar exited the classroom, a majority of the students slumped over their desks, utterly drained. Professor! Devon, Roxanne, and Flannery hurried after Johan in the hallway. Steven, you saw the message I sent, right? Johan asked. Yes, Steven replied. So it's true. Flannery's face lit up with excitement. Trainers from Celadon University are coming to exchange experiences with us? She had been brimming with enthusiasm even during class, clearly itching for a battle. Roxanne, on the other hand, was more reserved, her expression a mix of concern and contemplation. Celadon University is renowned for producing top talent. She wasn't wrong. Legends like Professor Oak, Professor Birch, and Professor Cosmo were all alumni of Celadon University. Not to mention numerous top-tier trainers who had walked its hallowed halls. Johan remained composed, his gaze shifting to Stephen, who exuded calm confidence. Johan couldn't help but smile. With Stephen here, it didn't matter who Celadon University sent. This was one of the reasons Johan had no qualms about accepting the principal's request. Not just for Celadon's exchange visit, he felt assured about future regional exchanges too. When in doubt, trust Stephen. He never disappointed. Stephen, I'll leave this to you. I need to look for a place to rent. Playing the role of a hands-off team leader had its perks. Of course, Professor, Stephen nodded. Wait, you're renting a house? Stephen's puzzled look reminded Johan of something. The biggest property owner in Rustboro was standing right in front of him. What kind of place are you looking for, Professor? Before Johan could respond, Jengar eagerly started gesturing, stretching its tiny hands as far apart as possible. Big, Johan clarified with a chuckle. He didn't bother holding back with his student. After all, he was planning to pay rent, not freeload. He explained his requirements succinctly. Give me a moment. Stephen stepped aside, pulling out his phone. After a brief call, he returned, looking slightly apologetic. Places that meet your needs are rare, but I've sent you the list. Take a look. Johan opened the message on his phone. He stared at the list. A dozen or so properties. Rare? Johan felt numb just looking at it. Noticing his reaction, Stephen added, If nothing suits you, I could have the plans adjusted for one of our under-construction buildings. No need, Johan waved his hand. That's too much trouble. What kind of house are you looking for, Professor? I could help ask around, Roxanne offered. Her family's assets weren't on Stephen's level, but they still owned considerable property in Rustboro. It's a pity, Flannery chimed in. If this were Loveridge Town, I could have helped. Johan. He tilted his head back, staring at the ceiling. What kind of students were these? To avoid further mental fatigue, Johan quickly settled on a property closest to the academy. Property Johan chose was near the academy but on the opposite side of his current residence, nestled beside a quiet commercial street. While the foot traffic wasn't significant compared to Rustboro's busiest areas, it was conveniently close to the school and offered a serene, secluded charm. Two-story building, painted white, had a small fenced area out front with a few trees and chairs, suggesting it had once been a shop. Behind the building was a modest garden, roughly 40 to 50 square meters, with more trees and well-maintained greenery. The main building itself covered nearly 300 square meters across 2 floors. Johan envisioned the first floor as a cafe, with perhaps a third sectioned off for a small psychology consultation room. This would cater to people who genuinely needed help while filtering out those looking for idle distractions. The second floor was residential, featuring a 4-bedroom, 2-living-room layout with a balcony and kitchen. The only downside was the back-facing balcony, which received little sunlight. What do you think, Jengar? Johan asked. Jengar's eyes sparkled as it stared at the building. Kaka, are we really moving here? The garden had a small river running behind it, home to several wild water-type Pokémon, a sight that immediately won Jengar over. Let's see what the others think. Johan released Vulpix, Tinkatuff, and Dratini from their Pokeballs. If they were moving, it was only fair for everyone to have a say. But it turned out Johan had overestimated their fussiness. He was the pickiest one among them. Since Johan was satisfied, the others naturally had no objections. To them, the place didn't matter. What mattered was being together. Wherever Johan was, that was home. Johan made his decision. This is the one. He quickly called Stephen to confirm. Professor, are you sure? Yes. By the way, what's the rent? Rent? Stephen sounded surprised. Professor, I didn't plan to charge you. Johan. Steven, business is business. All right. How about $10,000 a month? That's too low. $12,000? Higher. $13,000, final offer. $15,000. Let's settle there. $5,000 for housing, $10,000 for the shop. It was reasonable given Rustboro's market. While still a favor, it was a fair compromise. Fine, Stephen relented with a sigh. I'll send a construction team to help renovate. Renovate? Stephen added. We'll customize it to your needs. Don't argue, Professor. If I don't do this, my father won't let me hear the end of it. A rental that came with free renovations? Johan couldn't argue. Soon after, Devon Corporation's construction team arrived, quickly drafting blueprints based on Johan's preferences. Fortunately, the building's original layout was in excellent condition, so the necessary changes were minimal. Crew estimated they'd be done within a day. For now, Johan and his team could rest up and prepare for the move. Johan also began planning his cafe. While the equipment purchase was straightforward, he already had his eye on a high-end coffee machine and grinder. Hiring staff would be trickier. As a teacher with Pokémon to train, Johan couldn't manage the cafe full-time. But it was his passion, and with the opportunity in front of him, he didn't want to miss it. The next day, Johan and his Pokémon went furniture shopping. Buy whatever you like, Johan declared magnanimously. Pokémon's choices were unique. Dratini picked a large bathtub. Tinkatuff opted for a set of gym equipment. Jengar wanted a 50-inch TV with casting capabilities. The most bizarre choice came from Vulpix, an elaborate cat tree. A fox climbing a cat tree? Johan muttered. In the end, Johan's purchases were the priciest: a new bed, a comfortable sofa set, and, of course, a professional-grade coffee machine. Coffee equipment alone cost over $50,000, even with a discount from a sympathetic shop owner. Despite the expenses and challenges, Johan felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Everything was ready. The next chapter of their lives was about to begin. The next day, Thursday morning, Johan could clearly feel the excitement from his Pokémon team. In one morning, Jengar licked him 3 times, Vulpix froze him twice, Tinkatuff kicked him twice, and Dratini coiled around him once. All things considered, he was still alive. Johan understood their enthusiasm. After all, if everything went smoothly, they would be moving to their new home that evening. But before that, there was one task left: welcoming the delegation from Celadon University. Celadon University and Rustboro's Pokémon Academy had a close relationship, with frequent exchanges between the two institutions. However, when Johan arrived at the Academy's reception room and saw the person standing at the door, his heart skipped a beat. Professor Johan, a soft, hesitant voice called out. Professor Yuka. Standing before him was Yuka, the flower arranging instructor he had unintentionally bested during the first round of the mentor assessment. And with her presence came a memory. Her distant cousin, a Celadon University instructor and Celadon City gym leader, Erica, a skilled grass-type Pokémon trainer. Johan had already apologized to Yuka, and she had accepted graciously. But the Academy still whispered of his cold-hearted defeat of her during that assessment. Could Erica really be here? Is Professor Johan here? A voice came from inside the reception room, accompanied by the soft clacking of wooden sandals on the floor. Stepping into view was a young woman dressed in a yellow maple leaf-patterned kimono, her short hair styled with a headband. She wore white socks and wooden Geta sandals. It was none other than Erica, Celadon City's gym leader. So it really is Professor Johan, Erica said with a polite smile, bowing slightly. It's an honor to meet you. Professor Erica, you flatter me, Johan replied cautiously, relieved by her friendly demeanor. Is that so? Yuka often praises how skilled you are, Professor Johan, Erica teased with a soft chuckle. Erica. Yuka's cheeks flushed red as she gently tugged at Erika's sleeve. Johan pressed his fingers to his temple, feeling a headache coming on. Erika's tone soon grew more formal as she continued. I understand you'll be overseeing this exchange. On behalf of Celadon University, thank you. She bowed again, her movements graceful. It's my duty, Johan replied, still unsure of Erika's intentions. To show my gratitude, I brought you a small gift. Reaching into her bag, Erika retrieved a small glass vial filled with pale green liquid. A light, alluring fragrance wafted through the air as soon as the vial was opened. Caw-caw! Jengar sniffed the air, its nose twitching, and emerged from Johan's shadow. Perfume? Johan asked, surprised. This is a fragrance I blended myself with sweet scent as the primary note. I hope you like it, Professor Johan, Erika said with a sly glint in her eyes. Erika was known not only for her grass-type prowess but also for her expertise in floral arrangement, archery, fashion, and perfumery. In Celadon City, she ran a well-known perfume shop and was famously protective of her craft. In the anime, Ash had once insulted her perfumes, leading to his immediate expulsion from her shop and her refusal to battle him. It's lovely, Johan said as he accepted the bottle. Caw-caw. Jengar snatched it eagerly, taking a deep sniff before its eyes glazed over in bliss. The scent reminded Jengar of Aromatus. Ah, Aromatus, such a dreamy aroma. Watching Jengar's reaction, Johan couldn't help but feel he'd been outdone. She prepared a gift, but I didn't? How rude. Walking around Rustboro Pokémon Academy, Erika's autumn-hued kimono and wooden sandals, paired with Yuka's quiet beauty, drew countless gazes. Through showing Erika and Yuka around, Johan suddenly realized something. Professor Erika, where are the Celadon University students? Weren't they supposed to be here for the exchange? Oh, they've gone ahead to warm up, Erika said with a knowing smile. Of course, exchanges between Pokémon academies invariably involved battles. Not that it mattered to Johan. He had Steven. Let's not keep them waiting then, Johan replied confidently. When Johan entered the battle arena, he quickly realized this exchange might not be so simple. As soon as they arrived, a figure sprinted toward them and promptly dropped to one knee before Yuka, clasping her hand with a love-struck expression. You must be the famed Professor Yuka, Erika's cousin. I'm Brock from Kanto. The young man had a buzz cut, a square face, and perpetually squinting eyes that had morphed into heart shapes. He wore a green shirt under a brown vest, and his demeanor oozed infatuation. Johan's mind momentarily stalled. This familiar sequence of actions, words, and expressions. Could it be the one and only Brock, the human Pokémon world's legendary beauty radar? Caw-caw. Jengar materialized beside Brock, its mischievous grin widening as it watched him cling to Yuka's hand. Without hesitation, Jengar extended a ghostly hand, zapping Brock with a playful jolt of its signature move. BZD so tingly. A heartwarming, familiar scene. Thank you, Jengar, Yuka said softly, her relief palpable. Erika could only offer a sheepish chuckle at Brock's antics. Behind Brock stood two more students from Celadon University. The first was a shy boy with purple hair, wearing a green shirt and shorts, holding a bug-catching net. This is Bugsy from Azalea Town in Johto, Erika introduced. Johan recognized him immediately. Bugsy, the future Azalea Town gym leader. His Scyther's Fury Cutter was the bane of many novice trainers, second only to Whitney's Miltank. Professor Johan, Bugsy greeted timidly, scratching the back of his head. He's a big fan of yours, Erika added with a smile. Bugsy's face turned beet red. I want to be like you one day, Professor Johan, a great researcher and eventually a Pokémon professor. Encouraged by his determination, Johan nodded. Work hard, you can achieve it. Bugsy beamed with pride. Finally, Johan's gaze landed on the third student. This one had purple hair, a burgundy suit, a black tailcoat, and a scarf around his neck. A mask obscured his eyes. Will. the future psychic type Elite Four of Johto. Johan inhaled sharply as he processed the lineup. Brock, Bugsy, and Will, a future Elite Four member and 2 future gym leaders. Celadon University sure doesn't pull punches. Johan's thoughts briefly wandered to the Academy's struggling admissions office. Without Steven or Roxanne, Rustboro Academy's student roster would pale in comparison. "Let me perform a magic trick," Will said suavely, placing a hand over his chest and bowing theatrically. Jengar's eyes sparkled mischievously. "Magic? I want to try." "Caw." Floating behind Will, Jengar tapped his shoulder lightly. As Will turned, Jengar's glowing blue eyes met his. "Hypnosis." Will froze, his pupils contracting. A moment later, he crumpled to the ground. "Caw." Jengar blinked innocently. "Huh? That worked too well." Johan and Erica stood in stunned silence. "Professor Erica," Johan began hesitantly, "I swear this wasn't planned." Erica sighed, glancing at her 3 students. 2 were incapacitated. "Do you think I believe you?" Bugsy clutched his bug net, trembling. "Should I just faint too?" "Professor, are you done already?" Devon, Roxanne, and Flannery arrived just in time to witness the aftermath. "Johan." "Caca," Jengar proudly puffed out its chest, whistling nonchalantly. "Wait," Flannery pointed out. "There's still one left." Bugsy Sigma LOL. "Taking control of the battlefield?" "Johan doesn't exist." Celadon University, as expected of the master strategist. Thankfully, this was a relatively private exchange event, so there wasn't a large audience to witness what had just unfolded. Every year, Pokémon academies across different regions engaged in exchange programs, or rather exchange battles, designed to hone the combat skills of academy-trained trainers. Outside the official matches, academies often arranged smaller, informal exchanges like this one. These were more aptly described as friendship matches, a chance to test the waters and learn from each other. Johan initially thought he was holding an unbeatable hand, 2 kings and a joker, an easy win. To his surprise, the opposition wasn't weak either, boasting their own 2 kings and a smaller joker. Still, Johan was unbothered. After all, this was just a friendly match meant to gauge abilities. And besides, he had Steven. Victory was in the bag. His gaze swept over his team. Steven with his calm smile, Roxanne with her slightly tense expression, Flannery with the fire burning in her eyes, and Jengar wearing a menacing grin and pointing at itself. Johan's forehead twitched. "Jengar, what are you doing?" Jengar stuck out its tongue and licked its lips. "Caw. I want to face off against that magician guy again." Johan sighed and took a deep breath. "Roxanne, you go first." Roxanne stood up with a serious expression. She interpreted Johan's decision as a sign of trust in her abilities, an acknowledgement of her strength. After all, she was the only one among the trio who had actually battled Johan before. Noticing her nervousness, Johan offered encouragement. "Don't overthink it. It's just a friendly match. Focus on doing your best." Roxanne nodded solemnly. "And if things get tough, we'll just throw Steven in to sweep the field," Johan joked. "Steven, ? Roxanne chuckled, her tension easing noticeably. Not far away, Erica patted Bugsy on the shoulder, signaling him to take the stage. Thus began Roxanne versus Bugsy. Bugsy was a bug-type specialist. Among all Pokémon types, bug types were generally considered one of the weaker ones. While they only had 3 type weaknesses, their attacks were ineffective against 7 types, giving them poor coverage. Rock types, on the other hand, were not particularly strong either. Although their offensive coverage was better than bug types, they had 5 type weaknesses. That said, rock types were super effective against bug types. This meant Roxanne held the advantage against Bugsy. Round 1, Roxanne's Geodude versus Bugsy's Pinsir. Bugsy clearly wanted to make a strong impression. His pincer, though pure bug-type, was incredibly strong and had learned several fighting-type moves, which posed a significant threat to Geodude. Unfortunately for Bugsy, Geodude's defense was outstanding. Roxanne, having learned from Johan, employed his Iron Defense Slam strategy. Even though fighting-type moves were ineffective against bug-types, the damage boost from stacking Iron Defense before slamming pincer proved to be very effective. Round 2, Roxanne's Nose Pass versus Bugsy's Scyther. Bugsy's ace, Scyther, managed to defeat Geodude with its superior speed. However, it fell to Roxanne's Nose Pass shortly after. The reason? Scyther's quadruple weakness to rock-type moves. Professor, mission accomplished. Roxanne returned to Johan, her cheeks flushed with excitement as she reported her victory. Well done, Johan praised her, despite noting areas where she could improve. On the other side, Bugsy looked dejected, but Erica quickly stepped in to console him. You did well, Bugsy, Erica reassured him. Since this was a friendly match, the two teams were seated close enough to hear each other's conversations. Johan's voice carried over to the Celadon team. Bugsy, his eyes slightly red, looked at Johan, who smiled and said, Starting with pincer was a solid choice, you handled it well. Bugsy blinked in confusion. Wait, is he implying there was a better strategy? But if you'd started with Scyther, Johan continued, you could have used its speed advantage to stack Swords Dance, then baton pass to pincer. Pincer could have swept the team. Everyone, including Steven, Flannery, Erica, Will, and Brock, exchanged glances at this revelation. That makes sense, Bugsy said softly. But what if Geodude attacked immediately and didn't give Scyther a chance? Then you could have opened with Tailwind and followed up with U-turn, Johan explained. Pincer would have had the upper hand regardless. Bugsy's eyes lit up with realization. It really would have worked. Roxanne, overhearing this, suddenly felt less pleased with her victory. Is Professor Johan using this to warn me not to become overconfident? Professor? Flannery interrupted. Johan shook his head before she could say more. Flannery, this is just a friendly match, he said. As teachers, our job is to impart knowledge, guide, and resolve doubts. That responsibility isn't limited to one academy, one student, or one match. Was this even a strategy? To Johan, it was common sense. To everyone else, however, it was profound wisdom. Devon, Roxanne, and Flannery exchanged looks, their respect for Johan growing. This is our teacher, Professor Johan. Bugsy, Brock, and Will also felt newfound admiration. Thank you, Professor Johan, Erica said with a smile. Before Johan could respond, she added, I'm starting to believe you don't use underhanded tactics after all. Johan? Now you believe me? Johan glanced at Jengar. Jengar, Kaka Epsilon. Round 2, Flannery versus Brock. Just as Bugsy lost to Roxanne, Flannery lost to Brock. Her fire types had no advantage against Brock's rock types. Still, the friendly atmosphere remained intact. Both teams exchanged strategies and observations, fostering genuine learning. Flannery was disappointed, but her spirits lifted when Johan reassured her. Don't worry. I'll teach you a new strategy in a couple of days. Really? See? She'd already forgotten her loss. Erica then turned to Johan with a playful smile. Professor Johan, don't you think you owe me a gift? Ha! Let's have a battle, Erica proposed. After all, nothing says gift like a one-of-a-kind match. Instantly, everyone's excitement surged. A battle between professors. This was the hallmark of inter-academy exchanges. When differing philosophies clashed, the professors settled it on the battlefield. Erica continued, I heard you recently challenged both Saffron and Viridian gyms and earned their badges. Johan blinked in confusion. How does she know that? Also, Erica added with a sly smile, Professor Oak himself called you a master of the mind. Johan? How did news spread so quickly? Still, seeing Erica's playful expression, Johan sighed. So this is about avenging Yuka, huh? You'd better not cry when you lose. Johan warned with mock ferocity. Erica clasped her hands coyly. Oh, how frightened I am. Professor Johan, will it be an unrestricted battle, a rotation battle, or? Stepping onto the battlefield, Erica asked with a calm smile. Do all Kanto gym leaders have a thing for unrestricted battles? Johan couldn't help but grumble internally. Then again, upon reflection, they really did. Erica wasn't just skilled in flower arranging and perfume crafting, she also excelled in archery. Kind of archery where pokeballs were used as arrowheads, shooting Pokémon directly into battle. It was reminiscent of Ethan's billiard cue style. Of course, she also used arrows without pokeballs when necessary. Let's keep it simple, Johan suggested. This is just a friendly match, so we'll go with a basic 1v1. Erica gave a polite nod and bowed slightly. When she straightened, her hair was pinned back with her headband, revealing a sharper, more spirited expression. In that case, I'll rely on this one. She produced a pokeball from her sleeve, prepared for battle. Johan did the same, signaling he was ready. Audience stands. Devon, Flannery, and Roxanne sat with Brock, Will, and Bugsy. Miss Roxanne, I must say I greatly admire you. Before Brock could finish, Jengar materialized from Johan's shadow, placing a hand on his shoulder. Caw. Brock froze, his expression stiff. Mama. It tingles. Jengar, what are you doing here? Flannery asked curiously. Johan was about to face Erica, so why wasn't Jengar with him? Since Erica specializes in grass-type Pokémon, Steven mused, Professor Johan will likely send out Vulpix for this match. But then why was Jengar following him earlier? Roxanne asked, confused. Grinning mischievously, Jengar produced a bucket of popcorn from seemingly nowhere. Tada! Grabbing a handful, it stuffed the popcorn into its mouth, crunching loudly. Delicious. Caw. Want some? Jengar generously offered the bucket around. Thanks, Jengar. Everyone's eyes lit up as they eagerly accepted. Wait, where did you get this popcorn? Bugsy asked, curious. Jengar clenched a fist dramatically before slowly opening it, suggesting it had made the popcorn itself. But the Academy doesn't even have corn, does it? Roxanne questioned. Devon, recalling a certain incident, rubbed his temple awkwardly. It's probably from those sunflora running around campus. Wait, sunflora seeds can make popcorn? Hold on a second. Will paused mid-bite, suddenly realizing something was off. Turning to Jengar, he asked cautiously. Jengar, how did you pop the popcorn? Caw. Jengar grinned, summoning a small, ghostly blue flame. Will-o-wisp. Everyone froze. Will's face turned red, as did Bugsy's and Roxanne's. Devon, wisely, hadn't taken any popcorn. Flannery, however. Crunch. This is pretty good. Jengar, can you make it spicier next time? Flannery commented, her cheeks puffed with popcorn. Caw. Jengar gave her a thumbs up. Finally, someone with taste. Unaware of the chaos her students had endured at Jengar's hands, Erica stood on the battlefield, her focus entirely on Johan. Professor Johan, she said with a smile, do you have your own unique Battle Blossom style? She tossed her pokeball. A red beam shot out, revealing a massive Venusaur, its back adorned with a giant blooming flower. Venusaur, the seed Pokémon. Grass/poison type. The final evolution of Bulbasaur, one of Kanto's starter Pokémon. Veen, do you really have to be this serious? Johan's brow twitched as he looked at the hulking Venusaur. Though Erica's signature Pokémon were Vileplume and Bellossom, Johan knew full well how troublesome Venusaur could be. He threw his Pokeball, releasing his Vulpix. Hoo-woo. Vulpix's expression grew serious the moment it saw Venusaur. Relax, Johan crouched to reassure his Pokémon. Just do your best, it's not about winning or losing. Vulpix nodded solemnly. Oh, this opponent looks tough, but I'll give it my all. Its tails curled as it produced its cherished small ice stone, which it began to chew on. Crunch. Johan, you could eat that this whole time. He'd thought the ice stone would last for a while, but apparently another expense was on the horizon. You okay? He asked. Vulpix swallowed the shard with a gulp, nodding confidently. Oh, ready to go. This doesn't count as a performance-enhancing substance, does it? Johan wondered briefly. Go for it, he finally said. Vulpix leapt onto the battlefield. Professor Johan, it seems both you and your Pokémon genuinely enjoy battles. Erica's soft gaze sharpened. And I'm equally thrilled for this upcoming match. Though there was no official referee, their mutual understanding was clear. The battle began. Vulpix's snowy white fur shimmered, a faint frost exhaling with each breath. Snowflakes began to fall, covering the battlefield in a light blanket of snow. What incredible weather control! Erica's eyes widened slightly. This is the strength of Professor Johan's team? Venusaur used Leech Seed. Venusaur launched seeds from the flower on its back. The seeds landed near Vulpix, quickly sprouting roots that wrapped around the small Pokémon. Meanwhile, Johan's Pokédex displayed Venusaur's details. Venusaur. Type Grass/Poison. Ability Overgrow. Moves Sunny Day, Leech Seed, Toxic, Protect, Substitute, Sleep Powder, Poison Powder, Razor Leaf, Synthesis. Seeing Venusaur's moveset and ability, Johan immediately grasped Erica's strategy. His expression turned a bit peculiar. Oh, it's that strategy. Vulpix used Nasty Plot. Vulpix ignored the leech seed's growing vines as it focused, its cunning and power increasing. Erica frowned. This wasn't the usual strategy she had expected from Johan's Vulpix. Isn't it supposed to stack hail and build snow forts? Till she pressed on. Venusaur Toxic. As the toxic sludge flew toward Vulpix, Johan sighed. Course the classic Toxic plus Substitute plus Protect combo. What a nasty strategy, he muttered. Oh, Vulpix dodged by burrowing underground. Dig, Erica smiled. That won't work. Venusaur's vines glowed faintly, revealing the underground Vulpix's location. Leech seed tracking? Johan. This is some next-level nonsense. Vulpix, now's your chance. Vulpix burst out of the ground, breaking Venusaur's Protect. Use Blizzard. Oh! Snow and ice whirled violently, blanketing the battlefield. Erica tried to counter. Venusaur Sunny Day. But something was off. Venusaur struggled to alter the weather as frost-covered flowers began blooming around it. That's Aurora Veil. Venusaur Substitute. Erica commanded urgently. Too late, Johan responded. Vulpix unleashed its full blizzard, enhanced by Nasty Plot. The icy storm engulfed Venusaur, even bypassing its substitute. Venusaur fainted. Panting, Vulpix ran back to Johan, nudging him with a pitiful whimper. I'm poisoned. I need 10 antidotes. In the stands, the students were speechless. Roxanne, Flannery, Bugsy, and Will exchanged glances. Johan had indeed demonstrated how to counter a toxic protect strategy with raw power. But how are we supposed to learn that? That blizzard covered the entire field. Roxanne muttered. Bugsy added, and it broke through substitute like it wasn't even there. Brock, clutching his chest, sighed deeply. Perhaps this is the biggest gap between Professor Johan and me. He thought about the cheering officer Jenny's and felt his heart shatter. Good work, Venusaur. Erica gently recalled her Venusaur into its pokeball, speaking softly. Then she walked over to Johan. That was a truly beautiful battle, Erica said with a smile, a touch of admiration in her voice. In her words, the beauty of Pokémon battles lies in their fleeting nature. No two battles in the world are ever truly the same, making every moment irreplaceable. It's this enjoyment of fleeting beauty that makes life vibrant and colorful. Looking at Vulpix, who was now shamelessly nuzzling Johan's arms, Erica chuckled. That was a splendid display of icy flowers, she praised. Ooh. Embarrassed, Vulpix buried its head into Johan's arm, though the wagging of its tails betrayed its true feelings. Oh, and Professor Johan, here's the rainbow badge. Erica handed over an 8-petaled badge that shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow. Johan glanced around. This is the Hoenn region, right? Using Kanto's badges to defeat Hoenn trainers. Doesn't that break some rules? It's fine. Rules don't matter, Erica said with a mischievous laugh. No one's going to check anyway. Of course, no one would check. She was the one in charge of supervising such things. Besides, Erica added, aren't you planning to challenge the Indigo League? This badge will come in handy, won't it? Johan? When did I ever say I was challenging the Indigo League? And here, take this TM for Giga Drain as well. Giga Drain. Type Grass. Effect. Deals damage to the target and recovers HP equal to half the damage dealt. Pairs well with the Big Root item. Seeing the TM, Johan decided to just accept the badge. Fine. Now he had 3 Kanto badges, Thunder, Rainbow, and Cascade. With 5 more, he really could enter the Indigo League. To be honest, Johan wasn't entirely opposed to participating. After all, the Indigo League is Kanto's annual grand tournament with substantial prize money and rewards. Problem was he didn't have time to go challenge each gym one by one. Besides, Kanto's gyms were notoriously difficult. Forget it. I'll keep it for now. If I collect all the badges, great. If not, it'll just be a nice keepsake. Johan comforted himself with this thought. With formalities complete, Erica leaned in closer, lowering her voice. Professor Johan, have you ever considered teaching at Celadon University? Ha! Surrounded by a subtle scent of fresh grass, Johan froze, startled. Was she trying to poach him? Our university's benefits are far superior to those of Rustboro's Pokémon Academy, Erica continued. Besides, many of our flower arrangement faculty, who are mostly women, greatly admire you. Cough, cough. Johan coughed awkwardly and straightened up. There's no need to talk about benefits, that feels too transactional. Actually, I've always been quite fond of flower arranging myself. He trailed off and made a hasty retreat toward the stands. Watching Johan's retreat, Erica smiled mischievously, her expression akin to a playful devil's. Professor Johan really is adorable. Caw. The moment Johan returned, Jengar shoved a bucket of popcorn into his hands. You raided the gardener's sunflora again, didn't you? Johan immediately identified the popcorn's source. Caw. Jengar turned its head aside, feigning embarrassment. Why are you pretending to be shy? I didn't even praise you. Still, since the popcorn was already made, wasting it would be a shame. Johan grabbed a handful and popped it into his mouth. Under the watchful eyes of Roxanne and the others, he chewed nonchalantly. What are you staring at me for? Talk amongst yourselves. Johan looked puzzled at their reactions. Roxanne, Bugsy, Brock, and the rest. It was understandable for Flannery to be unfazed. She was used to fire Pokémon and heat. But how was Professor Johan immune to ghostly fire-popped popcorn? The final match between Steven and Will was spectacular. What started as a somewhat tense and competitive face-off evolved into a friendly exchange, with both participants appreciating each other's skills. They marveled at Will's psychic tricks and Steven's sheer strength. The outcome became secondary as everyone shared training and battle insights. With the sun dipping low on the horizon, Johan excused himself, explaining he had to move house. Hearing this, everyone eagerly offered to help. Faced with the dilemma of finding movers so late in the day, Johan wasn't about to refuse free labor. Steven went a step further, summoning a truck and several Machoke over the phone. In truth, this left little work for Erica's group. Jengar, why are you holding that lampshade? It's already broken. Leave it and wait until we're at the new house to lick something fresh. Stop worrying. Your plant is safe with the Machoke. Don't trip them again. Tinkatuff, put that hammer down. Those steel beams belong to the building. Chew. Tinkatuff, hammer mid-swing at a load-bearing column, paused at Johan's sharp rebuke. Johan wiped the sweat from his brow. That was close. Smashing the column would have turned the building into a safety hazard. Despite minor hiccups, the move proceeded smoothly. Presence of Pokémon made the process remarkably efficient. By the time they arrived at Johan's new home, deliveries from the furniture and electronics stores had also arrived. As the golden sunset bathed the white walls in a warm glow, Johan and his team finally finished setting everything up. The house was now fully furnished. Johan initially wanted to invite everyone for dinner, but Erica and the others were tactful. Knowing it was Johan's first day in his new home, they excused themselves, promising to visit for a meal another time. After seeing his guests off, Johan returned to the second floor to clean the kitchen and dining area. However, as he looked at the massive oval dining table, he couldn't help but glare at Jengar. I told you not to buy such a big table. It's not like we have that many Pokémon to seat. Caw. Jengar muttered something about planning for future additions to the family. Vulpix, meanwhile, was ecstatic with its new cat tower. It leaped and climbed across the structure, chirping happily. Johan had taken the liberty of modifying the tower, extending platforms along the walls of the second floor to create a parkour-like environment for Vulpix. The idea was to keep it active and entertained while also preparing for its eventual evolution. The fox Pokémon seemed utterly delighted, its cheerful cries echoing through the house. Elsewhere, Tinkatuff was busy lifting weights in its personalized gym room, and Dratini was happily splashing in its oversized bathtub. Everything was falling into place. But then, as Johan brewed a cup of coffee downstairs, a shadow slipped through the slightly ajar front door. Johan's sharp eyes caught it immediately. Stop right there. Caw. Caught mid-sneak, Jengar froze on the spot. Johan narrowed his eyes. You were upstairs just a moment ago. When did you slip out? Jengar chuckled sheepishly, its grin wide and unrepentant. Caw. I was just scouting the area. Making sure there weren't any thieves or bad guys lurking around. Bad guys? The soft orange glow of the ceiling lamp spread over the wooden round table, making the array of delectable dishes look even more tempting. Raise your glasses. Johan lifted his cup high. Caw. Oh. Chew. Dry eye. The four Pokémon also raised their glasses, well, sort of. Jengar and Tinkatuff used their hands, while Vulpix and Dratini used their tails. To celebrate our new home, let's down this moo milk. Clink. 5 glasses clinked together, their collision ringing through the room. Then came the familiar glug sound as the creamy white liquid streamed into mouths, spilling a little down their sides. Ah! With a synchronized sigh, they set down their glasses. Looks like the moo milk is out. We'll switch to berry juice next, Johan said. The 4 Pokémon had been drinking through the moo milk at an alarming rate, especially Jengar since its evolution. If Johan let Jengar have its way, it could easily gulp down 2 or 3 crates in one sitting. Jengar, top them off! Johan called out enthusiastically. Caw. Grinning wide, Jengar grabbed a batch of berries from their stock and began preparing fresh juice using the blender. Johan's gaze swept across the table to his Pokémon. There's so much I could say. He smiled softly. But it all boils down to one thing for our friends. For our family. The 4 Pokémon cheered in unison. For our family. After a busy day of hosting the University Exchange and moving house, Johan's Pokémon didn't seem to be the least bit reserved about their new home. In fact, they were more comfortable than ever. When Johan finished his phone call with Cynthia out on the balcony and came back inside, he found his Pokémon gathered in front of the new 50-inch TV, binging a show together. Without hesitation, he joined them. Through about 30 minutes of watching, Johan succumbed to the day's exhaustion. He scooped up the yawning Vulpix and carried it to bed. Meanwhile, Gengar, Tinkatuff, and Dratini stayed behind to clean up the mess they'd made during their TV session. Gengar, lights off, Johan called out sleepily. Caw-caw. Click. The new house plunged into darkness. Figures, Johan mumbled. Only you could turn off the lights this thoroughly. Soon he drifted into a deep sleep. In the darkness, Gengar's eyes suddenly snapped open. Chew. Tinkatuff sat up straight in bed. Dratini, bundled in a soft blanket, groggily rubbed its head against the fabric before reluctantly getting up. Hoo-woo. Vulpix, still snug in bed, rubbed its eyes and let out a tiny yawn, a crystalline tear glinting at the corner of its eye. Caw-caw. Gengar gestured for it to stay put, pressing a hand downward in reassurance. Vulpix understood its task perfectly, stay in bed to keep Johan company. With a nod, it snuggled back into the blanket, resting its head on Johan's arm. Once Johan was fast asleep, Gengar cackled and motioned to its companions. Operation Go Time floated out the window effortlessly, Tinkatuff following close behind. Dratini, slightly confused but unwilling to be left behind, slithered after them, only to trip on the window frame, creating a bit of a ruckus. Johan stirred but didn't wake, prompting the Pokémon to sigh in relief. Under Gengar's experienced guidance, the trio made their way to a nearby clearing. Dry-eye. Dratini tilted its head, unsure of Gengar's intentions. Even Tinkatuff seemed puzzled. Gengar didn't respond, flashing a sly grin as it pulled something out of its mouth. It was a bottle of Erica's sweet scent perfume. Pop. As the cap came off, the alluring fragrance wafted through the air. A light breeze spread the scent further, carrying it deep into the night. Both Tinkatuff and Dratini were momentarily entranced by the sweet aroma before Gengar snapped them out of it with a playful smack on their heads. Chew. Tinkatuff stared at the bottle eagerly. Dry-eye. Dratini, too, looked at it longingly. Gengar chuckled darkly. But soon their expressions turned serious. With the scent spreading, it wasn't long before their guests arrived. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed as crimson eyes pierced the shadows. One pair, then two, then three. A pack of Mytena and Puccina appeared. They were followed by a Meowth leading a group of Alolan Meowth, a Mook, Golbat, and Raticate. But the most menacing figure was a crocodile striding forward. Its body exuded an air of authority, with swirling sand around its feet, its dark red scales accentuated by jet-black stripes, and a pair of sunglasses perched atop its snout. The arrival of the crocodile immediately subdued the other Pokémon, their prior aggression dissipating as they deferred to the newcomer. Gengar squinted as if realizing it had forgotten something. "Ah, right. I should have worn sunglasses too." Then its gaze fell on Crocodile's shades. "Caw-caw. Are you the boss here?" Crocodile's gaze swept the area, searching for the source of the alluring scent before locking onto Gengar and its companions. Snap! Bared its fangs. "Newcomers, huh? Paid your protection fee yet?" Crocodile adjusted its shades, though it made no difference in visibility. Gengar blinked in confusion. "Caw-caw. You can see with those on?" Crocodile grumbled. "First, it's a bit hard, but you get used to it." Halfway through its explanation, Crocodile realized something wasn't right. Snap! Tone shifted, barking a threat at Gengar and its team. Gengar responded with a feral grin, raising a hand as dark energy coalesced around it. "Caw-caw. From now on, this territory is under the protection of the Johan family." Crocodile froze for a moment. "What? Are you trying to take over?" Unbeknownst to the opposing Pokémon, Gengar had picked up this habit from Gabite and Garchomp during their trip to Empty Cornet. Strong Pokémon should protect their territory, Garchomp had said. The area around him, Coronet? That was Garchomp's domain. And now Gengar intended to claim this territory for itself. Snap! Crocodile's growl was cut off mid-roar as Tinkatuff's hammer, frosted over with ice, slammed into its face, sending it flying. Chew! Tinkatuff dashed forward, snatching its hammer mid-bounce with an excited gleam in its eyes. Chew! That's my opponent. Chaos erupted as Pokémon clashed. Dratini, initially confused, soon realized what was happening. Was this territorial conquest? Surrounded by several opposing Pokémon, Dratini let out a determined cry. Dry-eye! They struck first. Don't blame me for this. It unleashed a devastating hydro pump, sending a torrent of water crashing through the crowd. That night, the clearing echoed with the sound of howls, growls, and crashes. Friday morning. Johan woke from yet another bizarre dream. This time, he dreamt he was a Leafeon, with Erica and her flower-arranging colleagues adorning him with floral designs. Another weird dream. What's next, turning into a Wylord? Stretching, he glanced around. Wait, where are the little ones? A sinking feeling hit him as he climbed out of bed, only to find... Caca! Gengar grinned wickedly as it emitted a burst of white light. At the same time, Vulpix mirrored the glow before their energies seemed to swap. Ooh! Vulpix let out a low whimper. Johan froze in the doorway. Were they practicing pain split at full health? Seriously? Though their training methods baffled him, Johan couldn't deny their creativity. At least they weren't causing trouble. Relaxing slightly, Johan headed to the kitchen to prepare breakfast and enjoy a fresh cup of coffee. As he brewed, he made a mental note. Vulpix has fully absorbed the ice stone. And now it's mastered pain split. Time to start gathering new resources again. Sighing, he opened his phone to place an order for some affordable TMs. Maybe I should ask Lorelei for advice. He still hadn't been able to find a TM for Aurora Vale. The sound of a car engine outside caught his attention. Moments later, Steven strolled in with a grin. Morning, Professor. Does this make me your first customer? Johan laughed. Sure does. I'll even give you a half-price discount. As Johan prepared Steven's coffee, he couldn't help but marvel at his new life.
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500-plus novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.